This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first 22-23 workshop. And we were commenting earlier that this is probably the third time in 14 years we didn't have a snowstorm today. But the cold did make up for that. So, library. Susan, take us through your presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to jump right in, try to hopefully keep this succinct. I'm going to start off with some highlights and grants that we were awarded this past fiscal year, or year we're in. We have gotten $107,624 worth of grants this year with zero matching from North Haven, so that's all bonus money for us. We've got a new fiber internet connection, which is the direct to the CEN. I let you know last year we were applying for it. We did get it. Construction is due to begin in March of in a couple months. We have new outside Wi-Fi, and you can actually access Wi-Fi into the back of the parking lot of the fire department. It goes that far, which is great if we have storms or people can't connect, like anybody has an issue at home and the library's closed, they can get Wi-Fi 24/7. We got an Ecf Grant, which is through USAC and the FCC, and that is just about $13,000. With that, we're getting 15 Chromebooks, 10 iPads, and 15 hotspots. That also includes 1 year of hotspot service. And we're getting an ARPA grant, which is different than the town's ARPA grant. And that money is $17,854. So with that, we are getting 2 talk booths, which are like good old-fashioned phone booths without the phone. So people tend to talk on their phones in the library, but it gives them the opportunity to have like either a job interview or a telehealth visit and still have privacy in the open space of the library. We upgraded our water fountains with the water bottle filling stations. We got an electronics cabinet, Chromebook cases, iPad, and hotspot cases. Power station, so basically if we have a table like this in the middle of the room, it hooks power so people can use their computers and charge their phones. So that's through our study area. And an entranceway, people counter, and a phone charging station. So we also went fine-free, which I'm sure probably scares some people on the finance board when you hear that, but it does help to increase equity throughout our community. And a lot of studies have found that the punitive cost of fines doesn't prevent people from returning their books late. We actually get more books back because people aren't afraid to come to the library because of their fines. And the cost of replacing a book that never came back is a lot more than the little amount of fines we would be getting. So we're really happy to have patrons back who haven't visited the library in a while. And we did put out donation bins on all of the circulation desks so that people could give as they want to and not because they feel obligated to. We've already gotten like $400 worth of donations, so it's pretty nice to have that option. People are very happy with it. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
What is a Chromebook?
A Chromebook is a laptop, but it's a Chrome operating system.
I don't even know what it is. I've never heard of it before.
It's essentially a laptop. It's just that it's not a Windows operating system. They're much more affordable.
Sorry
and no, I'm glad you asked. The schools, all the kids use them.
Yeah.
So those are the kids in school use those as their computers.
And what were the fines for people not bringing back books?
Well, they've gone down consistently over the past 3 or 4 years. 5 years ago, I think we were pulling in between damages and replacements and fines like $15,000. Last year it was like $400. So one of the main reasons that it went down a couple years ago is we went to automatic renewals, and that means that like if your book was due and then you said, oh no, 5 days later, and you called up and renewed it, you'd have been charged those 5 days. So when it automatically renewed, we didn't get that money in between. So we were already in the process of those fines going down. Mm-hmm. So compared to 5 years ago, it's quite a bit less, but in the past 3 years, it's not a lot.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah,
I'm retired, I don't know what.
no, Jim's been on the board since the 1950s, so I'm very sorry. Yeah.
Do not pick on board members.
Yeah, so looking at the budget here, your part-time line of...
Why don't we let her go through finishing her presentation?
I thought you were asking, I'm sorry.
I just
thought
went
you were
on this
asking
slide.
for questions. No, by all means, finish your presentation first. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
He started it with the questions.
Well, she wanted to know about the
Had
cover
to do with
sheet, so I
something
asked
that
about
was on
it.
the screen now.
Yeah. Okay. So, here we go. So, our personnel, full-time, everything is going up due to personnel increases, union contract obligations. Our personnel line looks like it jumped significantly, which it did. And that's because our part-time clerks were making $13.89 and $14.04, and they had been for 5 years, they hadn't had a raise, and we were advertising jobs at $15 to $20 an hour. I'm like, these are hardworking, dedicated people, so we talked to Mike and Ed, and it was like, can we please raise them? So it's all of that, what we put in just after the fiscal year in, I believe, July or August. So it was just to keep up with the times.
Way to read my mind answering a question before I was able to ask.
So I'm prepared.
Yes.
Just a quick question on
Sure.
that. You had a pretty substantial increase last year, right? It went from 522 up to 625. Meaning
That was because
2021 to 2022.
they had to make up for the union contract wasn't settled, so
Got
it
it.
was all the.
It's retroactive.
that was-
Let's let her finish making her presentation
Sure.
before we ask her questions,
Sure.
please.
Okay, so those are our personnel lines. Our commission secretary is only $70. That's for anticipated union contract going up. Summer staffing, we did not open the library on Saturdays last year, so that line was barely used. And we used it once when we were open after a storm, so we can offer power and air conditioning. So that's why it looks just barely touched. But with the salaries going up, we need to account for that in opening on Saturdays. Dues and expenses, I just wanted to be able to have a staff training, so I asked for $300 there. Office supplies, so 2 years ago we were at $14.5, then last year it was cut to $13.5, and there's two things that account for this. We went down on our printing, the cost of printing all of our print flyers, our program flyers, and that's because we were closed, so our costs were a lot less. And there was also, we have 3 Xerox machines, and one of them was getting charged incorrectly to a different department, so I budgeted for it, and it never was getting the money taken out. I reported it, and it got hit for $2,100, which was what I budgeted for. So when you all looked at the budget, you saw it looked like we had a lot more money, but we really didn't, because the copier was being charged to the wrong line.
Okay.
So I'm just asking for that to be reinstated. And then Lion, even though the cost has gone down, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. That's our library consortium fees, and they haven't gone up in 3 years. They're going up 1.45% this year, and it's a plan for the next 2 years. But in the meantime, we also became SIPA compliant, which means it's the Child Internet Pornography Act, I believe. And we've gone through the steps. So when you become SIPA compliant, you qualify for discounts for your internet service. So we're able to cut our internet service down quite a bit. So the line dropped, but Lion fees are going up, and I just wanted you to see that so that for next year you know it's coming. Does anybody have any questions on this
Nope.
part?
Let's finish it and then we'll ask.
Okay. The next 3 are like basically the big asks. So our maintenance of library equipment, we're going from $1,300 to $7,050. We already installed a new computer print and management system. Our old one is extraordinarily antiquated. It literally didn't work with Windows 10. It was not charging patrons for copies and prints. It failed. So we had to upgrade, and there was a little chunk of change there. So it's a $37.11 annual cost, and that includes our yearly maintenance and the implementation fee split over 5 years. The new system does take credit and debit cards, It does allow you to print from home with no need to log in on the computer. When you come, you can just scan your card and pick up your print job. And you can print from anywhere in the library, which was also a problem for all the people working on their computers. If they wanted to print something, they'd have to stop what they were doing, go downstairs, log onto a computer, and print something out, email. It was a hassle. So that system is in place. I did have a lot of conversations with Ed about it. So there's that. Hotspots, they do have an annual service contract. Luckily, we were able to get on the education service contract. Our original quote was $40 per unit per month for a service fee. We got it down to $15 per unit per month. And we have 15, so the hotspots in the first year of service have been provided through the grant, but the continued service of the hotspots will be $2,700 a year. And then device management, in order to manage our iPads, hotspots, Chromebooks, all that good stuff, we needed software, and it also filters for pornography, so we are going to remain SIPA compliant. That costs only $35, but that's because we're able to get a better price qualifying through the CEN. Okay, I'm going to go to the next
Yep.
page. Oops. Okay, so our program requests, this is where everybody has take and make packets on their desk. Last year, you did give us an increase, which we appreciated because we're doing a lot of Zoom programs. What I would like to request is that when you look at our numbers that are here, you look back to 2018-19 and kind of envision the beginning of 2019 before COVID. We were actually up in the amount of programs that we offered. That's what we're hoping we're going to be back to when COVID subsides. That's our goal at next fiscal year. So we were planning to be back in person, so we really should be looking at the 2 years ago amount of programs that we had, or stats. But people have had Zoom fatigue, so we haven't had quite as much attendance on Zoom, and not everybody can actually access us through Zoom. So we did start a new program. Our children's librarian was like, how could we reach people if they're not coming in for Zoom and we can't see them in person? She came up with these craft pack ideas. And we started those in November, and we've offered, we made 572 from November to the end of the fiscal year. And they were so popular in the children's department, we started them in the adult department, and we made 158 craft packs. And we're constantly getting asked, when's the next one coming out? What are we going to be doing? People have said, please don't let this ever go away. So if you look at the cost at the bottom, the average, we're looking at about $3,000 in what we would be spending. I'm not asking for $3,000, I'm asking for $1,000. We can try to cut back a little in the regular programs that we're offering online or in person. And we always try to get free programs, by the way. But our craft packs are really popular. And this is like one of them that, you know, was a sample made. And this is a heart warmer. Somebody's got this in there. It's a, you throw it in the microwave and you can warm your hands. And this was another one that we had in the spring. I mean, in December. Okay. Okay, our circulation stats. So we were closed 25 out of 52 weeks, almost half the year due to COVID. So with that, you lose the ability to browse. You know, you think about the impulse buy you have when you're in the grocery store and you get the thing that's on the end cap that you didn't plan to have. That's what a lot of our books are. People say, oh, I didn't realize you had this book, and they grab it. So you lose that ability to browse. So we did drop in our physical circulation because we were fully staffed the entire time, and our staff worked very hard. They were excellent. They filled the online holds, they ran virtual programs, answered phones, provided readers advisory, and answered reference questions, but they, I mean, people couldn't browse. So we did have the grab and go pickups, but with that, our electronic circulation, I mean, the numbers are insane. We were up 1,558%. Last year when I presented, it was 300%, and I thought that number was extraordinary. But to go up 1,558% is just a crazy stat. So people were finding us, finding everything we have to offer. I don't know what happened, sorry. Okay, so I've asked for $19,000 in this line. A couple years ago, my predecessor had asked, and you graciously upped our line to 105. I don't remember the balance. And then we had COVID, and we didn't get shipments for 4 months of books. So it looked like we had a crazy amount of money left, which we did, but we weren't. There was nothing to physically buy. Like, we just couldn't get the books in. So then our budget was cut, and it was COVID, and we understood. 75,000 was this line. It jumped to 85 last year, which was helpful, especially with all of our electronic resources that had gone up. But we're still feeling very behind. We've actually had to cut a lot of books to make this work, a lot of print books. So I wanted to show you what I want to spend on the 19,000 that we're requesting. First of all, inflation's, you all know, 6.81% this week. If just with that alone to stay flat, we would need $5,855. But the other investments we'd like to make is we are working on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and trying to be as comprehensive as possible. So we would like to get software that will help us analyze our collection. This will help us figure out where we're areas of need and gaps in our collection. And then the children's and teen toolkit can actually be used by the public schools. I didn't tell them that yet, but hopefully we get it. A library app. I believe, Diane, you asked me about this last year, and I was looking into it. And at the time, it was 10,000. There wasn't a lot of apps available. I found this app. It's actually a better app, and it's less money. But if you look at some of the stats, I mean, 4 out of 5 mobile minutes are on apps. And people spend 86% of their time on apps on the phone. And we have a very comprehensive website, and it is mobile. I forgot the word. It works mobile, but it's just hard to navigate it. Apps are it's just so much easier to use an app. So we're just trying to, I don't want to say get with the times, but stay with the times. So we would like an app. We also have library calendar software. If you sign up for a program, we are using something that's free. Free is wonderful, but it has its limitations. So with the new software, the calendar software, it's branded. It integrates into this app, which is why I chose this one. And we'll be able to actually manage our statistics, which will be wonderful. But the biggest highlight of this is room booking software. So we have 2 study rooms. And the only way you get a study room is you walk in, and if nobody has it, you put your name on a list and you get it for an hour. So this is great if you're if you have a job interview and you want to schedule a time to book the room so you have the whole room for an hour, or if you are tutoring. So, I mean, people come to the library to learn, so it's great if we can give them that opportunity to book the room.
Susan, if we get the app, can they book it through the app?
Yes. Yep. And you can get a library card through the app. Like, you can pretty much do everything. It's pretty awesome. And then that really only leaves $1,128 balance, and which isn't even that much money. But our current high holds on print copies is about 15 to 20 weeks. So we'd be able to reduce that a little bit. And then Wonder Books, I brought one to show you. Basically, these are super popular, and we're getting a lot of requests, but they're like $60 a piece. And they have a little play button in the front, and so you can actually listen to the story as you flip the page, and so it's great for people learning to read. You can hear the words, and they're awesome. This is capital. Do you want to ask me questions about?
No, let's finish the presentation.
Okay. This is going.
But you missed a page.
I know, it's going super quick. Okay, so there's 3 things that we requested, or I requested in capital. Chiller replacement, I told you about it last year. I actually lost count of the number of times that I had to call our HVAC crew to come in because we had no air conditioning. So the repairs are just crazy. But also, if they have to drain the system, when the gas that they use to put the system get it going again is R22, and it's not available in the United States it's not available to be imported into the United States anymore. So what we have here is what we have, and the cost is going to go up. The more it gets used, and the less is available. And they're actually stopping to make parts for this system because it is aging out. So parts aren't available locally. Like, we had to wait 4 days in the summer. That's a little bit hot. So that's the chiller. Door access control. There, as a safety concern, it was requested that all town buildings be updated to key fob access for our staff entrances, so we know who's going in and out of the building. And the library is the only building in town that doesn't have key fob entrance access. And the last request is for furniture for $6,350. Our circular couch in front of our puppet theater is ripped, and it's kind of a little bit gross. And currently, if somebody comes by with a wheelchair, we can get them into that area. We have to move the furniture, the last piece. So I'd like to make it fully handicapped accessible and keep that 3-foot path so that somebody in a wheelchair can get into that area. So that's my furniture request. Do you want me to do 5-year capital too?
Yeah, just briefly.
Yep. Basically, just furniture. As the building is aging, we're going to need furniture over time. I did put in for next year, I really would love to combine our circulation and reference desks in the adult department. Our counters are actually worn through already, but this would be the furniture and replacing it and just making a centralized service location instead of circulation here and information desk over here. Carpet will be 25 years old, so it's $200,000. That is that cost is high because it's extraordinarily expensive to move all the books to do the carpet. It's not necessarily the carpet, it's the physical part of moving the books. PC replacements, that just keeps us on track. Painting the roof and repairing the roof, I put in for 2 years from now. I know that there's hopefully talk of other ways we might be able to access this, but I at least wanted you to have it if that didn't work out. And countertop replacement in the children's. I don't think their desk setup is a one service desk unit, one area of service. So we don't have to change the furniture there, but just the countertop.
Susan, that was a very nice presentation. This board actually appreciates the diversity in programs you've brought to the town, and I think most of us will continue to support you to the same degree.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for library? Michael, you first. We'll go around the horn.
Yeah, first I want to say, echo what Chairman Monaco said. The programs are just like the concerts on the green. They are services that are incredibly valued. Sorry, they're incredibly valued. They add to the cultural enrichment of our town, and if you're only asking for a $1,000 increase there, that's great. Your program is excellent. Are you happy with the hours that you operate with right now?
Yes, we did reduce down to closing at 8 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. and we did that actually so that I could, prior to raises, balance. Because many years, every year we were way over, and it was a way for us to try to meet that need to balance the budget. So that's one of the reasons we did that. Most people, not a lot goes on from 8 to 9 p.m. at the library, so we haven't had very many, I don't even know if one person, I mean, they question it, but they don't complain about it, a few people.
Not even noticed.
Yes.
Really, because most people aren't there past 8. We do have to start our programs at 6:30 instead of 7 o'clock, but most people don't, I think our attendance was better at 6:30 than 7 o'clock because by 7 o'clock sometimes you're home and on the couch.
We're actually hoping our attendance will be better at 6:30 than 7 o'clock, but we have a tendency to have some people show up late.
I might subcontract out the first half hour. On behalf of some of my friends, I have to ask, is the Rotary Corner being maintained?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, as a job resource for
Yes. Yep.
the town.
No, I think we bought 300. Oh my gosh, I had these when I was going to meet with the Rotary a couple weeks ago. I knew the stats in my head, and I apologize I don't have them here, but we have been using it. Rotary also supports Job Now, which is on our website, and we continue to buy updated study guides, career stuff, new business books.
Right. Every time, by the way, I miss the old days when Lois was here, and she'd be very jealous of all the federal money that you've acquired. So I want to thank you for applying for it, or for making sure that we get every dollar that we can. So that's amazing. That's to me, if a department head can do that, that makes your salary very valuable to us.
Oh, yeah, I just realized it's more than, I got more than my salary, hey.
Yeah, so, but I always ask Lois the question about the roof, and thank you for mentioning that it's in the 5-year plan, maintenance of it. To me, that $100,000 next year in the 5-year plan, that's worth the price of the warranty that comes with it, because we've always had some worries about the roof. That there's been issues in the past. So right now, no occasional leaks and no ice. Or are you managing the icing issue over the doorways?
Ice, because of the roof breaks, I think they're called. That, knock on wood, has stopped. I've actually been dealing with a construction company that I asked. We got them in now, and they were there yesterday. Because we were having certain spots where the gutters and downspouts were leaking, and they were actually, it'd be a beautiful day and we'd have an ice spot on the ground, and it's a safety concern.
Okay.
So they cleaned the gutters and sealed them. I still had ice. They came immediately out and they realized that the gutters pitched a little incorrectly.
Yeah.
So they're realigning that. So we're doing everything we can for safety in those areas. We did have one leak the day after when the wind blew sideways. I don't know, microburst,
Okay.
one of those.
All right.
So.
But thank you. You're on top of it. All right, two last comments here. One is that your overall budget, despite the increases you've asked for here, your overall budget up 7%, which sounds like a lot, but it's only $80,000. So for what you provide for this town, an $80,000 annual increase, I think, is quite reasonable. So forget about the 7%. That's just because your budget's so nominal or modest. And the last question, the last thing I just want to say is thank you very much for this food project gift here. But unfortunately, gifts to us do not influence our.
I just wanted you
I know
to
you
see,
tried.
It's not an influential thing. I wanted you to have a tangible thing to say.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what she's asking for money for.
I can't wait to see what the fire department's giving us today. Can't wait.
No,
That's going to be
I want you
true.
to go home and play and say, okay, we can give them the money. This is what she wants the money for.
Could be.
I think Jim would like a Chromebook.
All right, let's.
Well, that you have to apply for.
Can I just ask one question, please?
Sure.
So does the library have wireless internet right now?
Oh, yes.
So what's the difference between the wireless internet and the hotspot?
So a hotspot is a little unit that you can borrow. So say you just moved into town and you don't have a phone or internet or anything set up yet, you're going to borrow a hotspot so you can have internet anywhere you go. You're going to a meeting and you don't know, you want to do a presentation,
No, I
you
know
know if you
that.
can hook. Okay.
I'm sorry, I know what a hotspot is, but if we've got wireless internet at the library, why does someone need a hotspot over there?
They're going to check them out to take them home or take them with
Oh, they're not for
them.
use in the library, they're for take-home use.
Well, yep, to circulate. Mhm.
All right.
And
The schools also provide these.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And they'll go with the Chromebooks too.
Yep, next.
Diane? Anything?
Yeah, so the app,
Mhm.
how long would it take to get that, you know, they said, hey, let's go with the app, how long would it take? Because I think when you get the, if you get the app, hopefully you do,
Mhm.
you're gonna see a lot more, because everybody is on their phones, no one is using the internet, everybody's got an app, so I think that's a big thing.
It reaches people, so I think there was a stat that I didn't put on here. It's like 89% of 24 to 35-year-old people use, that's their main source of is their phone, you know, so the internet and access to everything. We will get the crowd of people that we're missing, I think, if we have an app. They'll realize that there's library access.
And how long would it take to get that up and running?
I don't actually know that, and part of that reason is I told my rep, I'm not going to know anything till July.
Okay. And then I
So-
have one other question. Carpet.
Yes.
Do we have to have carpet in the library? Like, what's the purpose of carpet versus not carpet?
Noise level?
Noise.
What?
Yep.
Noise level.
Yep.
We just need to modify how we do it. They should use tiles so that they don't have to relocate the racks every time it's
It
changed.
is carpet tiles, but I think that they had gone under them. I mean, we might be able to
We'll
go
right
around
up
them.
against it. might be
Yes.
better.
It
Save
might
some
be an
dollars.
easier choice, and,
And look at something that will give us the life like the casinos use and such.
yeah. And the thing is, you don't have to replace the entire, it's like around the desks is much worse.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we
And
might
traffic
be able to be
areas.
done in stages.
traffic area.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've gone to the office
Yeah.
too. They have
Yeah.
the tiles. It's the
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Anything else,
No,
Diane?
and this is a good idea, because there's, something that I do, which is like Painted by the Shore, and they were doing the online stuff. It was a way to do it, and so my girlfriends and I did it together, so that was really innovative to do that, because people were so locked in that they really couldn't do anything, so kudos to you. This is just your plans and the grants. All I could say is, wow, like, we're really on the cusp of technology with the library, so.
We're trying to be, we're getting
Yeah,
there.
you
We've been
are,
a little bit,
so.
lagging, but we're getting there.
Yeah, nope, that's all I have.
Anything else, Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for asking, because I did not have a clue as to what hotspot was. And I still don't. But I would like to talk to you a little further on your capital, the chiller. My question is, I like the idea that you went locally to a contractor in town. Did you solicit more than one company?
No.
Again, it's
Well, that's,
it's strictly for
right,
budget
that's for
process.
budget.
When it goes out for bid, they have to get at least
Yeah,
three.
they have to do that.
I see, okay.
It was just a
Because there
plug
were some
number.
questions I had on the contract itself. I read through their proposal. And, well, one of it was like a 12-week lead time. Was that 12-week is to start, or is that 12-week to complete? And
I don't know.
And then they also mentioned a 90-day warranty. So if that is the case, let's say we awarded the contract to this company, they would not, you would not benefit the apparatus in the middle of the summer, because it would, I would think you'd want to be testing it in July and August and September. So,
I think that they had talked about like trying to, if they were going to do this, starting it in like September, where we start to have cooler days, and then they would do their work so it's completed. So yes, I hear what you're saying, that it wouldn't be available until after. I thought that there was at least a 1-year warranty, but I can do a little bit more research if
well,
I don't think
it's
that's
neither
necessary.
here nor there. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
the solicitation of 3 or more would go out after the amount was.
In the request for proposal, we can put all kinds of stipulations as to when the warranty
This
kicks
is
in.
kind of one-sided. I read this contract, it was
Yeah.
one-sided.
I think, it's more just for a place mark, so they have a budget so she can plug into her
Yeah.
request.
I understand.
I would expect when we go out for 3 bids, it'll hover somewhere probably within 5% of that number.
and I did ask them to try to think forward, like that this would be for July,
Yeah,
so.
they would want to do it in the fall.
I meant price-wise.
Oh, price-wise,
Like, everything
yeah.
has gone up. I was like, this wouldn't happen until next fiscal year, so we anticipate any costs.
Well, he did. He wrote
So,
that in.
Okay.
He said it became effective after January 7th of this year.
Okay.
That's all. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick questions. Sue, I have to also say this is a really nice presentation, a really nice packet of information, and again, congratulations on all of the grants. I just wanted to ask, what are you anticipating the weekend hours will be? Because this is a question that I get all the time about the library.
We're back open as usual, so we are open 10 to 5 on Saturdays.
10 to 5 on Saturdays.
I don't think we've ever been open on Sundays, and we're not planning to.
Right. I know that Hamden offers both Saturday and Sunday hours, so that's why this question pops up. But also, I think there have been some periods of time where you've had limited Saturday hours and you've closed a little
We
bit
did
earlier.
during COVID, and then last summer, it was
Last
like,
summer.
it was a tough, like, do we open on Saturdays, do we not? And it was really due to COVID.
Yeah,
So-
again, for working families, I think that's when they, tend to use the library, so this is a question that comes up quite a bit. And if you do staff the Saturday working hours, you mentioned that 4 hours of that have to be overtime?
Well, right now, we start in September through the end of June. It's worked into everybody's schedule.
Okay.
So, and that's the 10 to 5. It's basically the last week of June through Labor Day. Those are we're open 10 to 1 on Saturdays. And because of the union contract, the full-timers get paid time and a half to be there.
I
It's
see.
in addition, like they take a day off during the week when they work a Saturday during the normal
I see. So it's
throughout
just
the
the
year.
summer hours will
It's
be
just the
10 to
summer
1.
Correct.
The rest of the year, it'll be 10 to 5. Okay, great.
And they work 9 to 1, by the way, just it's 4 hours.
Sure.
We're open 10 to 1.
And the chiller, I assume will cool the entire building. I assume there's multiple zones, but this is something that
Correct.
would apply to the entire building. Okay, I had to ask that. And then, again, as you mentioned, you had numerous service calls related to heat and heat plant maintenance. And certainly we saw last year that the actual number was quite higher than our budgeted number. But you're going with the same budgeted number for this coming year, presuming that you get this new chiller. So do you think that will cover everything, or do you expect, some overages in other areas other than the chiller?
I don't expect any other overages. We've had our generator, which last year we asked for that in capital, but they did some tests and stuff, and we didn't end up needing that because they were able to do a repair. And so the repair is in there.
And the boiler is all replaced?
The boilers was a crazy amount of work and time, and it's lovely to walk in, thank you all. I mean, well, we got the grant for those, but
Right.
to walk in and have heat and not
Right.
be afraid that there's not gonna be heat. But that ran so much longer than expected. So
Right.
part of that was also the rental of a temporary boiler.
Yeah, because we had that,
So
sort of
it's like
stopgap
we're not
measure and then
anticipating any
replaced
of
it.
that.
Okay.
So
So you're not expecting anything more? Okay.
I wish I could predict the
No,
future.
no,
of
of
our
course, we
building.
all wish we had a crystal ball, but I just have to ask, because I'm just looking at the numbers. And again, you had mentioned in terms of the roof painting, I just recall at the most recent Board of Selectmen meeting that Lynn Sadowski presented on a grant for $1.8 million with matching from the town.
Yes.
And one of the things that could be covered would be the painting of the library. So that is something that could be swapped out.
Right, in
potentially.
case we didn't get that
In case we
grant,
don't
I
get
put
it.
it in here so that you knew that it was something
Sure.
that we're looking for. I hope to heck we get that grant.
Right.
But we actually have a quote which I was able to give her when she was doing her grant planning.
Right.
So we've gotten that prior just because we had no idea what it was gonna cost. And I also wanted to see if they could go on top of the roof and take a look and see, do we have leaks that we're unaware of?
Right.
But that's extraordinarily expensive just to look.
Anything else, Nancy?
I think that's it. Thank you.
I got
Thank
one more
you.
question.
Yes.
And you're right, you mentioned that the average wait time for a bestseller is 15 to 20 weeks. How many bestsellers do you purchase?
Well, we get 2 copies of each. We have stuff that comes in automatically for the best-selling authors like Patterson. We don't even, it comes in automatically. If we see something's really popular, sometimes we will purchase the 3rd copy. A few years ago, we were getting 5 copies of each. So, I know, we backed off, and that's one of the beauties of being in a
It's not a best,
consortium.
it's not a #1 hit if you're on the 20th week waiting for that book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's tough.
one quick comment.
Good.
Regarding your part-time labor line, which is almost half of what the total $80,000 increase is in your budget. We understand with the labor shortage and with the necessity to attract and retain part-time workers that a significant increase in that line is necessary. So I just want to say, again, not a shocking number considering the environment that we're in.
And I will tell you, after especially a few years of not having had a raise, they were so appreciative. And, nobody's tempted to leave. Like,
Okay.
they're all dedicated, but this sealed it.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just had one quick question, since this has come up at several of our monthly meetings. The water line in your budget, again, and I only mention this because it's come up with regard to several other departments too. Is there something crazy going on
Yes.
with water? Okay, please share with us, because I'm very curious.
Every time with the boilers, they have to drain the entire system, the water that flows through to create the heat. And they had to do that once with the chiller as well, I believe. So we went through a whole lot more water because they had to drain the system several times in the installation. So it shouldn't, we don't anticipate it being higher because the water that's in the system should stay there.
But it should go down, right? Because you're not going to be doing that
Do I
again.
have
No.
it higher there?
No, it's the same number, but
It should stay
Oh.
constant.
why would it stay constant if you don't have
If
to
she's not-
reinstall it?
If she's not the reason it was over was because they were draining the system.
Well,
Nancy's
you
saying,
can-
though, that the number is the
The number
same,
remains static.
Rich, and should go
Oh,
down.
it should,
Oh.
The number should go down if there's.
Oh, it's the same as the increased number?
It's the same
Yes.
as the current fiscal year.
All right, we'll
Right.
adjust it.
So I just had a question because there was some question in the fire department about overages from the water department, or, was there something crazy? Did somebody leave a faucet on? What's going on? But I appreciate you explaining that. Thank you.
It's probably $500.
Yeah, it's $500. All right, thank you, Susan.
Thank you, everybody.
Michael, did you want to,
Yeah, we'll do community
since fire's
services.
not, are we doing community or are we doing fire next?
Well, we'll do, since fire's
He's
not
not
here,
here, let's
let's
do
go
it.
through community services, okay?
I mean,
Well, before Susan leaves, I just want to say that I see her in action on a regular basis, and I really appreciate her in what she's done. And she's an outstanding department head, and there's never been a time that she hasn't presented me a problem without offering solutions. And that is something I really appreciate, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think he's gonna keep you around another year or something. All right, Susan.
All right, so if you can turn your attention to page 44 on what you received, and do you have the budget books? Also, Tim, you didn't get the budget book?
No, I don't have, it wasn't in the other package either, I don't see it.
Okay, all right.
Oh, wait, maybe it's in here, hold on.
If you have the
Do
budget
you wanna go
book,
44 or 33?
both. I'd like you to look
Okay.
at both, okay, at the same time.
It's the copy of the same thing. You have it in your short copy, that'll work.
No. Tim doesn't have the,
I didn't get it.
But it'll work, it's the same as the short pack.
No, I didn't come, I didn't get it.
discrepancy in the
Yeah,
numbers.
no, I don't think there is there? I don't think there is.
Here we go, it's in here.
Okay.
33?
33?
I got it.
And you have page 44 in a regular budget
You have
book.
44 in there.
Oh, maybe he's talking about this?
Community services 33, and I think I got 44.
no.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, I got
it.
All right, so let's go through this.
the abridged edition.
All right, turn your attention to page 33 in the budget book and page 44 in the summarization. So we're going to start with page 44. So what I've done here is, you see on page 44, the director. You see that line, $18,210. That was a stipend given to the director of finance. I'm taking that out of this year's budget. And you see a director of community and senior services. That's an added position at $100,000. That's going to be offset largely by the fact that our senior citizen director is retiring. And my plan is to consolidate community services, the senior center, and the park department under the director, this position, the director of community services. The way it's set up now, it's 3 separate silos that Ed was trying to manage during his sickness and even while he was sick recently. So I'm going to reorganize these departments, put in a full-time position as a director, eliminate the expense of a full-time senior citizen director position, which you will see in the senior citizen center line. Judy is retiring, Judy Amaro. Judy, I've asked her if she would consider staying part-time, which she will. Judy will be in the senior citizen department budget as our part-timer with the designation as a municipal agent. Judy's got great relationships with the Agency on Aging, the VNA, and she can be a valuable asset to us as a part-timer. She's agreed to do that.
Mike, can I interrupt for a second? I'm kind of following your road, but I don't see any of these numbers on here.
They're not on here.
Are you looking at page 44?
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing
Okay.
on that, on 44 on
We
this.
got 18,210, that's it.
You have no other line items in there?
Well, I have the director, 18, the director's going $600, no change in the counselors.
That's it, yeah.
Some grants going down 10 grand.
Well, that's page, yeah. So what I'm
So the
trying,
director's going down,
director's going down.
and
The
his new
director's-
position is going up.
Well, the director's showing this, saying the same.
No,
No.
director is a dash
Look,
on
Mine is
44.
18,000.
No,
Okay, but Tim, go to the next line, director. You see the
I
100,000?
don't have that.
So, yeah, because Sherman, you.
See, all we have is this, Mike.
Yeah, you-
We just got
Yeah, you
this
need the
one
whole
piece of
packet.
paper.
They
We
don't
didn't
have
get,
the whole
we didn't get a package.
All right, so,
okay. He does not have it on his sheet.
He doesn't have it on his sheet,
It's in the
okay.
big book.
All right,
It's
so
not
I'll
in
Do
the-
you have it, Nancy, on page 44?
Yes, absolutely.
You have it, okay.
Because
Diana, you
I
have
had
it.
the whole packet.
Those that did not get the package are missing it in the budget.
So Sally's going to show you that right there, okay?
So,
All right, sorry, Tim, I thought you had it.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yes, Tim.
so I'm removing the 18,000, which was a stipend.
Right, okay.
I'm adding the 100,000.
I see.
That'll largely be offset by the full-time position being taken out of the senior citizen budget. It's not a dollar for dollar, it's still an extra cost. The counselors, you see, that's the same. We're losing a grant from BH Care. It was a one-time grant, that's $10,734. That's minused out of the budget. And then there's a youth service grant that we're not getting also. So the two secretaries are the same, the clerks are the same. There's an increase of roughly $100,000 in that line item.
Okay, yeah, I see in the following page, on page 45, you're right, the elimination
Yes.
of the,
Oh, I see, that's where it is.
Yep.
Manager.
or I'm
Yeah,
sorry, the
manager,
reduction
right. So,
of 89,232.
right, so again, it's Michael, it's not dollar for
Right,
dollar.
no, okay, yeah,
No.
yeah, sure.
Sure.
But this will be more efficient. Now, for those that have the budget book on page 33, who, does everyone have that?
Not Tim, and I guess.
So when we look at community services on page 33, go down to professional consultants. That is the BH Care oversight and management of the counselors to keep us in compliance with the state laws. If we didn't have that, we'd have to pay about $30,000 for a state license, which we don't have. So that is a savings on one part, that's an expense on the other, the 137. But the reason I'm reorganizing these departments, because I'm in the middle of something now with community services, that our billing is dropped. And I'm getting to the bottom of it with the counselors and the BH Care. So my job here now is to reorganize this to get us at maximum efficiency on billings, which in theory and mathematically should offset the 137. But, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. So page 33 shows some additional information, dues and expenses, professional consultants, event and program expenses. Page 44 shows the personnel on the other document that you have. So I'm just going to summarize one more time. I'm looking to reorganize the departments and add a director of community services, and instead of 3 vertical silos reporting to the director of finance, it'll be 1 department head reporting into myself and the director of finance. And we're offsetting the expenses by taking the manager's full-time position out of the senior citizen center. Any questions?
What's our typical revenue that lines up against this?
It should be 100% of the expense.
Okay, so it's not more than the consultant's expense?
It could be.
It could be.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking to create greater efficiencies over there.
Got it.
So, see, we're one of, I don't want to say few municipalities, but not everybody does what we do. We have professional counseling services that in critical times like we're going through in a pandemic are so critical to people who have issues. They could be child abuse, domestic abuse, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, mental health illnesses. So the importance of having counselors, we supply the services, but we collect the billings and the co-pays through the insurance companies, and that helps offset the expense.
yes, we've drastically expanded services without costing the town anything. You have a few capital items for community service, bus.
Yes.
Yeah. So on the bus, I'm waiting for a final update. My goal is to take, with the monitoring that I'm doing, speaking with the federal government on the ARPA funds, that we're going to be able to take a lot of vehicles out of capital, whether it be fire, police, and I'm hoping the senior citizen buses can be applied to that also, which would take that out of a capital expense. But the senior citizen buses are not validated yet that we can do that, so that's why you see it in there.
But they're essential to replace at the moment.
Exactly, yes. Because what they do, Michael, is
No, I just didn't know what the current status was of our current buses.
when a bus is down, it adversely affects seniors who have to get to doctors and medical appointments.
Yeah.
No, we need them. It just didn't,
Yeah.
you know,
So if we don't get it
How long
funded
are-
through there, we have it listed as a capital item for us to consider.
Mike, do you happen to know how many of these buses we have?
Two.
Two.
So we only have 2,
Yeah, it's in the write-up that came
And-
along in the package.
It's right there.
Yes,
but we're looking to purchase 2.
sort of a replacement for 2 is what it would be.
Two smaller buses compared to what we're using.
Right.
So one is a 20-passenger and one is a 14-passenger.
Yeah.
So they're 2 different types of
It's a better,
bus.
you know, Nancy, it ends up being a better configuration for our seniors with those capacities. So,
But would we be trading these in for new?
we haven't got to that point yet, Joe, I'm not quite sure.
Jim, I think one of them is totally shot,
Right.
and the other one is, you know,
Which way out?
So, but,
we'll get whatever we can for it, but. Anything else for community service? Because the fire department is waiting for us
I
patiently.
just want to know why we're losing that youth grant?
these are one-time grants, Mike.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, all right, that, good, I'm sorry. And the part-time line on page 45 is going up by 20,000. Is that where Judy's
Yes.
salary's coming in?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's an HON chair?
That's in the write-up too, it's the chairs that are in the senior center.
I know it's listed, I just don't know what HON stands for. The 100 chairs at $200 a piece, I just didn't know what it meant.
Anything else for community service?
I guess I'm looking for the answer.
What's the third silo? We had
I'm not sure what the acronym stands for,
senior,
Nancy. Yeah.
senior,
Park and Rec.
huh? Park and Rec?
Park and
Yeah,
Park and
all
Rec.
right.
We good? Thank you, Michael. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Frieda. Not bad, not as good as the library, but not bad.
She sets the standard, and Paul does too, so. But I'll have a PowerPoint available for the town meeting, though, Mike, for those presentations.
Morning, everybody.
Say, Paul. Morning, Paul. Pat, how are you?
I'll need about 5 minutes to set up if you just give me a minute, please.
Jim, let me see if I can raise the heat for you while we're setting up. Yeah, I know that you're.
Morning, Pat.
How are you?
No, you know, when we have a craft, do the craft with wine. Well, even better.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I just need a table if you want to just, maybe sneak that way more, yeah.
My girlfriend and I started going, and we go to one of these. Oh, did you physically go to the winery? Oh, I know, this is the one from. They're all over. I've been to Watertown, I've been to East Granby. Stonington. I don't believe you. So you do it, they're really nice, you do that, you get a glass of wine and then. There you go, you get an extra wine. Okay, thank you.
Sir, how are you?
I'm giving that to you for the. No, it's not.
All right, I don't.
Mine was off.
Feeling good?
We are back in.
I ain't bring any props like Sue did.
Yes.
Chief?
I know. She really showed me up this year. I can't follow the library anymore.
Let's see, hang on, maybe it's another one.
It's in the other one. Chief, want to take us through your presentation?
Yes, please. So I intend on this being a more brief presentation than in years past. It's many of the same board members that are gathered here today, so I intend to cover the highlights of the budget for this next year and kind of where my head's at with some of the different things presented to you in the packets. So since our last workshop, I always like to start, as with years past, with covering where we are, what's happened in the last year, and bring you up to speed. So as you know, we've been using Nelson Ambulance exclusively since about November of 2020, so that brought us through all of 2021, and I'm happy to report that we are experiencing nothing but great service from Nelson Ambulance. They're exceeding their contractual terms. We have 2 ambulances in North Haven at all times, one of which is a paramedic ambulance, and couldn't be happier with the service. Very rarely do we have to seek mutual aid. Very rarely, I shouldn't say rarely, less frequently do we have to support their staff to the hospital, whereas in the prior provider, we did that a lot. So we couldn't be happier with Nelson Ambulance, and we don't see any reason to make any changes in the near future. The staffing model is working for us. We're in constant contact with Nelson Ambulance. They realize how important this is to our town and to our taxpayers, and they continue to exceed our expectations. Regarding CERT, you know, the CERT team are the unsung heroes of the town right now. These folks have continued to step up and perform in the community. I encourage you to say hi to them when you see them in the town green, shake their hand and say thank you. That team has grown right now. We've trained about 100 members. Well, that's never good. Welcome to IT. We've trained about 100 members in CERT. And they have the option when they join CERT when are trained in CERT rather, to either retain membership on the team or to just receive the training and use it for their own benefit back at their homes. We've been fortunate to have retained about 60 members. So that team is 60 strong right now, which is incredible. Now, things that people seem to confuse sometimes with CERT is, remember that CERT is activated through the emergency management director. So I can't use CERT to respond to incidents and that kind of thing. If I need them for anything, it has to be planned out a little bit ahead of time. I have to send paperwork into the state so that we can activate them through some state and federal laws that allow us to do so. But they're great. We're able to use them for a lot of the contracts on the green, and more recently we've been able to use them for the mask distribution, the test kit distribution. We've got some plans in the future where we'll be using them some more, but that team is truly doing an incredible job. Furthermore,
Hey, Paul, sorry. Who's the emergency management director?
that's what I do. I serve as that function.
Okay, you have dual role, all right.
Yep. The staffing is in place. Staffing is available for all 4 shifts right now for Montauk. We're currently in the process of hiring 2, and that'll bring us active for all 4 shifts. Station generators are ready to go in all the stations right now. All 3 of the 4 have generators. I'm waiting on 1. And it should be here shortly, and that's for headquarters, and we're just victim of waiting for parts and things like that, like everybody else right now. That generator was ordered back in, I want to say September, and we're still waiting on it to come in.
What are you using in the interim?
The existing generator at headquarters is there. It's just old and it's undersized. So in the meantime, it gets us by, but that's what the capital was for last year, was to replace that generator at headquarters.
Yeah, Chief, okay, thanks.
Fire, police, dispatch improvement. So again, while this falls under the police department, this is a shared asset, and I'm happy to report that with the addition of dispatchers in the police department, we have seen a reduction in the number of fire calls that we have to respond to. So let me specify that. Seen a reduction in the number of EMS calls specifically that we've had to respond to. So with this past budget year, with being allowed to hire the additional dispatchers and giving them access to software and working through our medical control physicians, they're allowed now to triage the 911 calls and determine what level of resources need to be sent. One of the things that we help them decipher is, can we send just an ambulance to the call? And if they can send just an ambulance, then we don't have to send any fire units at all, and that's helped immensely. So I'll cover that some more later on, but I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that we're seeing a huge improvement in dispatch, and it's working out very well. Our Emergency Operations Center continues to thrive. It's new to the town. It's only a couple years old at this point. You'll see an operational line for that shortly. And our training tower, we just finally received a temporary CO on the training tower within the last 2 weeks. So that's been a long time coming as well.
The computer's gonna fight with you today.
Yeah, I know. You see that? I just want to make sure it didn't skip.
You're pulling
the
it
slide.
down from some places?
Yeah,
Because it's not on your hard drive.
So I've got a thumb drive that can actually pull it up. If you want to give me a minute, if we're
Sure.
going to deal with this the whole time, then we'll do this way.
Have a hot shot?
Hotspots. I know, I got an education on a hotspot a few minutes ago.
I tried.
Do you want to open up for me on your phone? It's so funny that I heard her say that too, because I actually have to talk about hotspots during this.
Yeah, the Chromebook. Sorry, guys.
You want a hot shot for your coffee?
Oh, no. This is what happens when you retire. You get out of touch.
It's a program for you at the library, I'm sure.
Yes.
Everything's failing right now. You know, Jim, I am going to open a hotspot.
Look, Jim, you can get a demo right now. You
Right
might as well
now.
just put it up there.
Is our wireless that bad in the buildings?
We've noticed that when Alex isn't here, things go downhill fast. So we need Alex quite often.
Good luck, John.
He was a find for the town.
He is a great
He is a very
find for the
capable
town.
person.
And what I don't think people realize is his background coming from the vendor that police and fire use for the CAD vendor has helped us immensely as well, because he's able to help us navigate some of those things that we'd otherwise have to wait several days for an answer on. So that was a great find. All right, I went with the hotspot, Jim. We're good. Let me pull it back up.
Now, if he had a Chromebook, it'd be even faster. If there's a line item in your budget for IT, we're going to increase it.
This is everybody. All right, we're back. All right. So over the last 5 years, in terms of our call volume, we continue to see a 10% increase in our calls. The alarms for 2021 ended up being more calls for service than we've ever had before. Now, I want to reflect on the prior slide and the prior information I gave you on dispatch. So even with cutting out about 40 to 50 calls a month through dispatch being able to triage those calls and sending an ambulance only, we still responded to more incidents than we ever had before. But that is also what explains the 56% reduction. I'm sorry, the 56% of EMS calls and the reduction from 72, 73% that we were for years prior of EMS. So cutting out a lot of those calls is balancing out the fire versus EMS calls. So something else I want to point out that you see there is 7% of our incidents were motor vehicle accidents, and more than 200 times last year we responded to the highway. And so unlike the police department, there's not a state fire department. So the fire department has to respond to the highway at all times. We receive the support of state police. They take a while to get there sometimes, but we're on the highway quite often. And what was interesting was, even adding this up, and I'd never paid attention to it much before, was we average about 15 to 25 times every month, depending on the month. But I noticed in the summertime, we're up there 30 to 45 times. So it's obvious in the summertime we get a lot more accidents up there. Our volunteer strength right now, where we're at, hasn't changed much, the overall numbers. Got it broken down there for how each station is set up right now with the number of volunteers. So the overall number of 32 qualified hasn't changed too much. What is changing, and what I am looking at, is the number of people who are on probation. So probationary members are interested candidates in the volunteer fire service. They're individuals who have expressed a desire to become a volunteer and are currently going through the training. We're only at 3 right now. We've seen a significant reduction in the number of people that are interested in becoming a volunteer firefighter. In fact, I'll bring it a step further. As of yesterday, we've seen a significant decrease in the number of people who even want to become a firefighter in general. There's a state consortium list right now that we're part of. We've been part of it now. This is our 3rd time It's a 2-year list every time. If you look at where the consortium was the last 2 times that we were part of this exam process, we're at 20% of the applications we would normally have throughout the entire state. So there are just less people in general looking to become involved in emergency services, and we're even seeing that now for volunteers. So it's important that we retain the volunteers that we have. We've got efforts in place to do so, but I want to just point that out to you. The other thing that we're working extensively on is our Explorer program, which is, you know, it's going very well. We're just hampered a little bit with some of the COVID restrictions like everything else. We've got high school kids in there and part of this program. It ranges anywhere from 4 to 8, sometimes more. It's been more, but we're very aware of the fact that with COVID going on right now, we can't train very much with them, and there's exposure concerns, and the last thing we want to do is be shutting down a school or a team on a school because of training they received through the fire department. So getting into our operational lines, I've asked for a $20,000 increase in the building maintenance and repair line. You know, and this line has been subject to some criticism in the past. And so this is one of the slides I'll spend a little bit more time talking on than the others, because I really want the board to realize what this line covers. And I need you to think about these fire stations like they're large, oversized homes with, in some cases, multiple furnaces, multiple bathrooms, huge 2-bay garages, and we're responsible for taking care of the entire thing. These stations do not receive any support from the central facilities line. This is the support for these buildings and operations of the building is solely through this line. So take a look at some of the things that we have to cover with that. Think about the overhead doors. There's 14 in total. When an overhead door fails, and they're used a lot, when an overhead door fails, I need to get it repaired right away because I can't get the engine out of the way. So if the overhead door won't open, then the engine that sits behind it is ultimately out of service. So those are emergency repairs, and we pay a premium to get those doors repaired in a timely fashion. I had one just out again this past week, and a timely fashion was still a week. If we didn't put a rush on it, it would have been 3 to 4 weeks to repair. We don't have that kind of time in these stations. But think about it. It's all the kitchen appliances, the plumbing, the compressors, the exterior lighting. I have people who drive by the stations and they say, oh, your lights are flickering a lot. Your lights are out. Yeah, I'm aware of it in a lot of cases. We've got a contract with an electrician. We've got to rent a lift. We've got to rent ladders. We've got to do things like that. It's all built into the quotes. And in many cases, it's not simply the bulbs anymore. It's the entire housing unit. Any kind of painting, locks and keys, doors and windows. Remember that 2 of the stations of the 4 still have an older component to them, still have an older wing or a second floor that's older, that wasn't remodeled or subject to the remodel. You have air conditioning units in those different portions of those buildings. The Plymouth vent system. So what's a Plymouth vent system? Every time these engines start in the bays, you don't want the particulates from the exhaust getting into the apparatus bay and getting into the area. So like even for a day like today, the apparatus is being checked out, it's being started in the bays. We can't run our cars in our garages at home, but we can run our apparatus in the bays in the stations and we can check everything out. And there's a big hose that comes down and sucks out all that exhaust. Well, those are very costly to repair because every time the engine goes out, that exhaust system follows the engine until it gets to the apron, the front apron, then it breaks off. And there's usually a magnet that lets go and allows it to travel on safely. But because they're used so often, they break a lot. Those systems are sole source and they're very expensive to repair. Professional cleaning services for all the stations, that's one of the things that we were very aware of during this period of COVID, where we wanted to make sure the stations were clean and disinfected more than usual so that we weren't getting anybody sick. And then you have annual maintenance, the extinguishers, the commercial hoods, the elevators. The elevator alone is a few $1,000s every year. The alarm systems, not only monitoring them, but paying for the repairs. I mentioned in a prior meeting, just like at home, your carbon monoxide detector is only good for 6 to 8 years. A carbon monoxide detector in a fire station is only good for that same period of time, but it's tied into an alarm system. A CO system alone at the Model E station recently cost us $6,000 to repair, to put in all new detectors so that it was good. Our SCBA, so every time that we take those bottles that are on our back and we have to fill them, and with air, those systems have to be checked. Quarterly, there's somebody coming out to make sure that the air we're putting into the into our bottles is clean and is contaminant-free, so that we're not breathing it in. And so there's filters and systems that have to be checked and updated there. Our sprinkler systems, our air compressors in each of the stations, every one of these has a maintenance cost, has repairs that have to be done, and so it adds up quickly. It's worth noting that we're trying to bring, essentially with this line going to 115 for all 4 stations, it comes out to $28,750 per station. It's still less than you're paying per station. It's still less than other departments in town that have one building. So it's consistent with the rest of the departments in town. Uniform line and dues, commission, and expenses, a few $1,000s in each. The uniform line, again, much like everything else right now, the cost of uniforms is increasing. We're a little bit limited on what we can purchase for uniforms. One, because we don't want to be buying a whole lot of uniforms different from what we've bought years in the past. That defeats the purpose of a uniform. But we're also continuing to try to stay compliant with NFPA 1975, which keeps a lot of these uniforms more of the cotton material versus your polyesters and your blends and so forth. And so there's a cost with that. Dues, commission, and expenses, it reimburses for staff licenses and professional development, and that line hasn't been increased in a number of years. The technology line, so this is perhaps another crucial part of the budget right now is the technology line. So every fire report that we complete, we have to submit. And there's a standardized way in which those fire reports have to be completed. It's called the NFIRS system, the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which is what that NFIRS is. It's all transmitted to the state, and then it's transmitted to the federal government for tracking purposes. We're required to complete those reports in a timely fashion and submit them every month. That entire reporting system, that software that we use, there's only a few vendors out there that allow departments to submit this paperwork, particularly as compliant with the state of Connecticut, and then there's only a few vendors besides. The current vendor that we use, it's called Firehouse Software. That is being sunset. That program's been around for about 20, 25 years. It's being sunset, it's no longer being supported, and we have to transition to a new program. The program that we're trying to move to bought out Firehouse Software, and so they have a way of bringing in all of the data. We have 20 years worth of data in there. When I mean data, I don't just mean the fire reports. I mean all of our staff tracking for payroll, all of our building inspections, all of our fire incident reports. Everything lives there. All of the repairs for apparatus. It's a full integrated system that we need to transition now to this new software. That it's important to make sure that we maintain the integrity of our existing data. And so with that, it's quite expensive to upgrade. You're welcome to ask around to the departments. They're all going through the same thing right now. We're essentially going from an annual fee of $3,400 to just over $11,000 for that one system alone.
And Paul, how much of this is iPads?
The iPads?
Yeah.
The iPads aren't much. We get them for about $800, but this isn't for the iPads.
Oh, it said several iPads need replacement.
Yeah, but that's what this line normally supports.
Yeah.
It's just this upgrade right now and the fee is more because of the cost of the software.
Okay.
But we normally buy a few iPads every year. They go on all the apparatus.
Yeah.
The ESO program, which is where we report all of our medical reports, so we have a responsibility to report all of our medical calls as well. That's called ESO. That has normally been paid for out of the EMS line, the same place where we pay for all of the medical equipment. I'm shifting that to this line. I'm going to shift the cost of the ESO. It belonged there anyways, really. It's technology.
We've got different numbers here too. Sorry for interrupting.
Yep.
Your verbiage says 37.5. Our report says 27.5.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
So that program is shifting over to this line, and we also have another program that's going up in cost. So every time that we put out a policy or an order, there is a time date stamp associated with the staff that see it and review it. The police department uses the same exact program. They're subject to the same increase in cost. And so that's the reason for this $20,000 increase in this line. It's all the various software that we're using. The next operational line is equipment, supply, civil defense. Looking to increase that line by $20,000. Again, this is a rather new line. It's gone from $12,000 for several years. It's at 32, trying to continue to increase that. So that takes care of the EOC, and the same thing, it's managing the entire town. It's hardening of dispatch so that, we've talked about this last year, so that if dispatch has a catastrophic failure, we can seamlessly move things over there. One of the things we have to look at right now is the uninterrupted power supply. So that's a picture of the North Haven Emergency Operations Center. And if we're in there operating and the power drops out, we'll go dark for a period of time. So we're trying to avoid that as well. Individual power USBs, so we can continue to manage the town and the incident effectively. The contractual replacement staffing line is another line that I know has been questioned a lot in the past. That line was, we've got a choice here. So it's essentially going to go up by $103,674, or we can hire staff, which is what I'm proposing, and it will only go up $13,674. So one way or the other, it's going to cost an additional $90,000. So what I'm looking to do here is this increase, it's because of anticipated wage increase next contract, and it's also because the number of accrued vacation time for the entire department continues to go up. We have a senior staff right now. We've got, I want to say 12 to 14 members with more than 30 vacation days I should say. That alone is what's driving this line up. This line is something that's going to continue to increase as we have staff that continue to build more seniority and accrue more vacation time. The driver for this right now is because we staff each shift with exactly the same number of staff that we need to operate. So I'll say that again. We assign 10 people per shift, and we have to operate with 10 people per shift. That's what the driver of this is. What I'm proposing that we do is that we continue to assign members to a shift and in excess of 10, and we operate with 10. And that's where your savings is going to be.
Is that mandated by the state?
It is not mandated by the state. It's mandated by the contract.
Well, by our contract.
Collective bargaining agreement, yep.
Yep. You need to have 10 firefighters on duty in order to operate the 2 engines, the rescue, and a ladder truck that we have in town.
Did that just go up? Because we used to have 8 or 9.
We did. When the call volume was 3,500, 3,000 calls, we did. We're 5,000 calls, and we have a third of the volunteers, which is why we've started to add additional career staff, which is why we're staffing Montelise. We don't have enough firefighters going to the scene anymore.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
We don't have enough firefighters going to the scene anymore.
Out to the scene.
So that was increased to 10, so that we can continue to make sure that we have enough apparatus staff to respond to all the calls, so that we stop missing as many calls as we were. So the minimum is 10, and that's what we staff. We staff 10, so think about that. So I want you to, Mike likes to use baseball teams a lot, so I'll use a baseball team analogy. Our baseball team consists of 10 players, not 9 in this case, 10. Every time that somebody calls out, we have to call somebody up to play on our team, and that costs time and a half, every single time. We can't forfeit the game. We can't not respond to the incidents. We can't not staff the apparatus. We need to be able to staff 10 individuals on that shift still. So every time somebody's out, sick, vacation, injured, doesn't matter, we're paying a premium to staff that shift. So what I'm proposing is, and this is what a number of departments do, is they assign more personnel per shift than they necessarily operate with.
So that will bring this line down though, right?
It's going to bring this line down, which is why it's 13,674. So if you look at, I know on your sheet,
Well, I got 2 different numbers again, by the way, but go ahead.
so it's 103,674 is probably what you're looking at.
Yeah, well, yes, and then this
Yep.
one says differently.
Right, because when we add the staff, it drops this line to
Okay, so my
13,674.
other one shows an increase of $15,000. Right, so it shows 887.
On contractual replacement.
13.
Okay, maybe my math is off, it's 14 or so.
Okay.
But, so that's the right number.
13,674 is the right number.
Okay, sorry.
So what are you basing the savings on? One man per shift per 24 hours, 7?
Yeah, so so I did an analysis last year, over the last couple of years rather, and if you factor every time that somebody's out on a shift, so let's say that on a Tuesday, you've got 10 people on a shift, one of them's out. I would count that as an occurrence, okay? So when I factored in all the occurrences over a given period of time, we determined that we determined how many shifts that there's at least one person out for, so that we can capture that savings. That savings, that by having that one extra individual per shift, ranged from $98,000 to $115,000, had we had one extra person on a shift last year. So that's where your savings is. So I'm projecting 90, and it's a conservative number to project. So let's take a look at kind of how this looks, and let's hope that this is going to work for us. This is showing the number of staff that we have. It's not showing names, but it shows essentially when they were hired and how many vacation days they're receiving. I can't control this. This is all in a contract. The newer employees down here, they're not receiving that many vacation days. It's a handful of days. The driver for this is the senior staff in the department, and the fact that we're staffing as many individuals per shift as we need to operate. That's what that's coming in. My next slide here should be able to show. Let me pull this one up. So let's take, for example, the month of December. We operate 4 shifts. I'm showing you 2 of them. So let's call it Division A and Division B, 2 of the 4 shifts. They work 24-hour shifts. So I have highlighted the days they would work during the month of December, and they say they work the entire 24 hours. It still comes out to 42 hours a week. So Division A works Wednesday, December 4th, Sunday, December 8th, Thursday, December 12th. Do you follow me on that top half? If I were to take just one individual and have them out on vacation, firefighter 2 on Wednesday the 4th, I have a sick leave on Sunday, I have another vacation, and factor all of that in. The 20th of that month, nobody was out. Didn't cost us any overtime. We didn't have to replace anybody. But every one of these other days, there was somebody out. And this is what we factored in, was we looked at the prior year and we figured out how many times there was an occurrence, how many times there was one person out per shift. And this is where that savings came in of $98,000 to $115,000.
Per shift.
Per shift. So if you just look at this one shift in the month of December, there were 6 periods in which there were 6 occurrences in which there were 24-hour shifts of overtime. $1,392 in overtime, that's $8,300.51 for overtime for that month, for that shift. Let's take Division B. I have injury leave for personnel. I have people who are out for 4, 6, 8 months. The first thing that goes through my head when I find out a member is injured is, I hope they're okay, and I pick up the phone and I call them. The second thing that goes through my head is my overtime line is going to be spent. Because they're out the entire time. I have to get a replacement for them every single day. So look at Division B. Firefighter number 14. Every shift that they're out, I have to pay time and a half for. That comes out to $11,000 for that month alone. So those are the drivers for the overtime. And this is just showing that one person out. So what I'm proposing, and this is the key here, is we need to start looking at going to 11 per shift and operating with 10. And that's going to have a direct overtime cost savings. You're either going to pay for it in a contractual replacement line, or you're going to pay for it in the staffing.
So what is the salary for us?
The salary for a firefighter, it's less than 90. It depends. It grades up from C to A. I want to say it's 68 right now, or whatever it is, but it's less than 90.
So the new hires, it's going to still cost the town money. If you're paying 68 and you're telling us it's 90 for
you're going to save 90.
You're going to save.
You're saving at least 90. I mean, like I said, when I ran it out, you're looking at a savings of anywhere from 98 to 115. So I'm projecting just you're going to save 90 conservatively.
So maybe maybe you probably said this when you started. Are there one or two new hires in this budget?
2,
Okay, and they would help fill this 11th man role,
correct, on 2 of the shifts.
right? And on the other 2, you've got enough personnel already to.
On the other 2, it's going to stay at 10 and we operate at 10.
Oh,
There's
I
10
see.
assigned
So-
and you operate at 10.
Okay, so
Yeah.
not all the shifts will have 11, but a lot will.
Right.
Yeah.
2 of the 4 will,
Okay.
Unless you want to hire 4.
unless you want, you're paying for it either way.
We ask the questions, he makes the suggestions, okay?
I mean, in reality, if you just look at page 42, a standard firefighter is gonna cost you 81,000. And if you're saying you can save 90,000 in overtime, I'm not sure if the 81 includes all the payroll tax and all the other little things that go along with it.
Does not.
Yeah, but you're basing this whole scenario on one fireman out. There could be more than one out for each shift.
Oh, there usually is.
So
But
that
you're,
throws this whole thing off.
no, it doesn't, because you're still having that
No.
savings. It's still one less person you have to hire.
Right.
Yeah, but your figures are gonna be twice as high if 2 people are out per shift.
No, because you're still gonna have the savings. You're still one less person you have to pay for in overtime. If you staff that shift with 11, you have to operate with 10. So even if so let's say that you staff that shift with 11, you operate with 10. 3 people are out that day. Summertime, it's gonna happen, right? Mid-July, summertime, of course we're gonna be out. Of those 3 people who are out, I only need to hire 2 back in overtime. So you're still saving the money.
One, yeah, but
This is the same thing that other departments are doing. This is why you don't see the overtime in other towns.
Frankly, we've
and
talked about
departments,
this
same
idea
thing.
for years.
Yeah.
I mean, this has come up,
And there's
many
validity,
times
there is
over the years.
validity to it.
Again, I would need to see the entire model, because when you hire 2 people, of course, there are many expenses associated with hiring 2 people, including adding the opportunity for 2 more people to be out on vacation or sick. Even when they come on early, as young firefighters, they have, as the chief pointed out, far fewer vacation days than the more seasoned firefighters. But we would need to see the entire model, because what you're proposing is you're swapping time and a half for time. But at the same time, you also need to be cognizant of all of these other expenditures associated with this. So what you're saying is somebody is out every day? In every shift?
Not every day. no.
Okay, so that's my first question. Is somebody out every day, basically every shift? And if the answer is no, then that's information. And then what do you do if you book 11 people and you only need 10? What happens to that 11th
run with
person? Are they
11.
effectively on
You run with
call,
11.
or are they compensated for their time?
You run with
You
11.
run with 11.
So where do you put them?
We'll figure that, that's an operations question. We'll figure that out.
So you would still have 11 all the time if you hired, well, I shouldn't say that. Initially, you would only have 2 of the 4 shifts with 11.
Right.
Right? Okay. And so basically you're asking for 2 this year, and I'm assuming you would ask for another 2 next year.
That's correct.
And do you have plans to add additional staffing beyond that?
That's 3 years away, so
I
we'll
understand.
figure that out at that time.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to understand whether there is a further distance to your plan than just 2 years.
At this point, no.
Okay.
Paul, the December numbers you showed us, was that hypothetical, or was those actually the absences?
No, that's the actual app.
So,
I mean,
so in all those periods, there was only one
day.
time in A where there was
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a full shift, and I forget what B looked like.
yeah, I mean, I have
You
it
had
here.
everybody
I
out
can,
one day.
you know, it happens more than you think. You're talking 10 staff and injuries and vacation and sick time. You have somebody out often. It's not all the time, but often you do. You're talking about 10 different people. I can have 2 or 3 injuries at the same time from all different shifts. Every time somebody goes out injured, we're paying time and a half the entire time. So, I often, and I'm gonna make this statement because I often get compared to the police department, which I think is unfair, but it's exactly what the police department does. They assign more individuals per shift than they have minimum, which is why their overtime line isn't what mine is. We're trying to do the exact same thing.
Now, there is validity to it. As Tim said, we never understood way back when this, 14 years ago when it was discussed, how the finance director at the time didn't see validity in it. Let's evaluate it.
Well, I can tell you when I first got hired over 20 years ago, there were positions that weren't filled because the finance director at that time believed in the overtime.
John.
Let me also point out that if a firefighter gets injured, we're self-insured on workman's comp also. So there's that expense for us if he's out for an extended period of time.
When does the contract end?
June of this year, June 30th.
So, is there anything, well, I shouldn't say, but just,
He thinks like I do.
well, I'm
I
just
know
wondering,
exactly what
you
you're
know,
thinking.
is it gonna go up to 11 per shift?
Oh, no, but it might be the
Valid
time.
question. I'm gonna get to that, I'm waiting for his presentation.
No,
before I even
Yes,
ask.
yes, I
Let's-
don't know how
let's-
we're doing this. So
No.
are we waiting for the whole
Chief, let's
presentation
finish
or
your
not?
presentation.
Sure, you got it.
Okay.
All right, so that's where we're at with the personnel increase. Shifting to capital, so for capital, the admin support vehicle of $40,000, we continue to find ourselves in need of administrative support vehicles. So these are the cars that myself use, 2 deputies use, our fire inspector uses. These continue to be something that we need to replace. I have needs to replace one of the SUVs, and the current retired police car right now that we're using continues to be replaced. This is something that I don't understand why we don't replace these on a yearly basis. And so I wanted to kind of discuss how these cars are used. So a lot of people may not realize just how much we respond to incidents. And when I say we, I refer to myself and 2 deputies. We're going to calls a lot throughout the town. And it's morning, day, and night. It's 24/7. One of us is on call at any given time. So in addition to responding to incidents, there is obviously administrative functions, fire inspections, fire investigation. There's staff meetings, there's fire prevention we respond to, and of course the incident response. So again, 1 of the 3 chief officers is on call anytime. We respond to all major incidents. We respond to incidents based upon what the fire commission asks us to respond to. So it involves fatal accidents, anytime a fire investigation is needed, mutual aid incidents. So we're getting more and more involved in mutual aid. This is something that this board has even asked us to become more involved with, is asking for more mutual aid. When we ask for more mutual aid, we have to provide more mutual aid. And so when we respond to a town outside of North Haven for mutual aid, one of the chief officers is responding with whatever is requested. And you want that. As elected officials in town, you want a fire chief officer responding with your firefighters who are going out of town. Because if I have firefighters inside of a building and I'm in Wallingford, or I'm in New Haven, or I'm somewhere else, you want one of your chief officers standing there accountable for your North Haven employees and in constant communication with those individuals who are inside, because we don't have the ability to be on the same radio frequencies as all of our surrounding towns. The radios have come so far and the technology has come so far, and they're constantly getting updated that we can't keep up with it. And we've got 4 different types of radio systems around us. So you want one of your chief officers responding to keep accountability of our staff, and then you want another chief officer to be aware of what's missing from town and how it's going to impact the response in North Haven. If I'm sending an engine and a ladder to another town to assist with a fire, you want one of the other 2 chief officers to be in town, answering calls, making sure we have enough support to cover our own incidents in town. That's what our chiefs are doing 24/7. We're in contact with each other. So typically 2 to 3 of us are available. We'll serve as the incident commander and a safety officer, but we need the ability to get to the calls. I have SUVs right now that go out of service regularly for one thing or the other, whether it's mechanical, whether it's air conditioning, no matter what it is, and you basically take a chief officer and you put them out of service. No way to get to these calls.
So we have 3?
We have 3 and we use 3. We have no spares. Each of us respond to about 300 incidents a year, and we're providing that incident command function when we get there. What you see pictured on the left there is an incident accountability board. So just think about a scene where you've got 20 to 30 people showing up at times, and you need to account for every single person that's there and what they're doing in case something catastrophic happens. That's what that board's doing. And so in the back of these SUVs, not only do we have that instant command board in all of them, but we'll have things like portable lights and flashlights. We'll have an AED. We'll have our structural firefighter gear inside. We'll have an SCBA. We'll have fire extinguishers. We'll have that accountability board. Things like traffic tape and fire investigation evidence containers. Paperwork for obtaining warrants and fire code enforcement. Multiple portable radios in the back that you can barely see pictured there so that we can actually communicate with staff. The back of it opens up enough so that we can stand underneath it and operate in a severe weather incident. You know, imagine trying to account for 25, 30 people and it's pouring raining on you. You want to be able to step out, get underneath this, operate as kind of a mobile office. They all have four-wheel drive. There's a number of different equipment that's inside. The entire back is inaccessible to passengers. It's just storage of equipment. And we need the ability to start replacing these vehicles. And so, much like we do with the police department, where we're replacing 2 to 4 every year, we need to start looking at replacing at least one of these every year, so that the chief officers in town can continue to have enough vehicles that are reliable enough so that if one goes down, we can go pick up another one that's sitting as a spare and we can continue to operate and function. Elsewhere in capital is the ambulances that we have in town, what we call the rescues most commonly. They're currently at 2013 and at 2017. We need to replace. It looks like it's going to be the red one to be able to accommodate the call volume, and we're seeing that these are starting to have ongoing issues right now with reliability. And when both of these go down, which we've had happen, we have no other choice but to use a fire engine. And a fire engine cannot provide the transport capability and cannot secure the equipment, and ultimately it takes an engine away from suppression somewhere in town. One of the stations now doesn't have an engine in it because we have to use it as a rescue. So we need to make sure that we have rescues that are reliable and are kept up, and the life of these, you know, it's time to replace them.
Is the 191 or 2 units?
One unit, 190. Elsewhere in capital is education equipment. We haven't asked for education equipment in capital since the 2016-2017 budget. Just think about all the car accidents that I mentioned that we're going to on the highway. This equipment, it has a shelf life to it. The hoses wear, the blades wear, and so forth. And what else you may not realize is the operating pressure of these begins to become too little. So not only does it depreciate over time, the operating pressure, so how fast and how hard it opens and closes. The newer vehicles that are out on the road right now, some of them we can't tear apart and cut open. Our tools are undersized and underpowered.
Chief, are these pneumatic or hydraulic?
So they're hydraulic, but we're actually starting to convert to some of the more battery-operated ones as well. So we have both, and that's because for a variety of reasons. The battery-powered, while they have the same amount of power, you are limited in how long you can use it for. Let's say 30 to 40 minutes, but it depends on the weather and how cold it is outside. So we do have a variety still that have the hydraulic lines coming to them.
Edible made a donation of battery.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, that's probably 6 years ago now.
So you've
Yeah.
been shifting more of them back to battery?
So we kind of do both, and so we have a combination of both. It depends on the apparatus. For example, for a while when we ordered engines, we ordered an entire compartment dedicated to big hose reels inside so that we can have these things hooked up and ready to go, and you've got to park within 100 feet of where you need to use them. The battery-operated ones, obviously, you don't have those kind of limitations, and you can still use the parking space. But with the amount of rail that we have in town, with the amount of highway we have in town, we're not 100% battery-based. We have to have some of these in case we get into an incident where we're using them for an hour or longer. So how do I see the future? I'm hoping that this board has realized that the EMS revenue line has stabilized. I don't see any reason to move that off of the $90,000 revenue that we projected. We're providing support, paramedic support, often enough to support that line, but not too often enough where it's impacting our operations. So I see that line stabilizing. Our apparatus repair line is going to stabilize in future years. I can't do it yet this year. I know that we have 2 engines on order right now, but we're not expected to have those until the spring of 2023, so more than a year away. So in future budgets, I'm hopeful I can look at bringing that apparatus repair line down, but I can't do that right now. We still have to keep the apparatus we have serviced until at least that time. We're going to continue to evaluate trends in call volumes, types, and locations so that we can identify what's going to be coming up in the future. We're going to monitor economic growth, and our focus is to retain volunteer firefighters. And that's what I have.
Thanks, Chief. Tim, do you have anything?
Start with Mike, if you would, please.
Mike?
Yes, Chief. We want to say we appreciate your service, and we're lucky to have you. You're an incredible professional, and you're a valued resource. And today's presentation, you did hit on all the major points that really concern us. So I want to thank you for this presentation, the way and the structure and the way you gave it. Of course, I go right to the big stuff first here, and that has to do with manpower.
That has to do with manpower and contracting. So years ago, when the minimum model, service model, or the minimum staffing for an incident was either 7 or 8, we believed at that time that additional personnel would reduce overtime. It never did, because there was poor communication as to how the minimum staffing and that service model creeped up from 8 to 9, and now it's, of course, you have communicated in the past, now it's 10. So we never, there was always confusion about whether new personnel would have a positive impact on the contractual replacement line. So now you've made it very clear today, and again, thank you for your presentation, that 10 is the model, and 10 is where we can finally achieve the benefit, the trade-off that we've been looking for years. And that's great for long-term stability for the costs of this department in the future, because you have had growth as the model has grown, and you've illustrated it to us before in terms of an incident illustration, and you've justified it. So the question is now with the contract. We also thought, or some of us, that the contract required contractual replacement regardless of your minimum staffing level. Now, I haven't read the contract in about 3 years. What does the current contract say for contract replacement requirement?
Sure. So there's not an overall number, so it doesn't identify necessarily 10. It identifies the minimum number of firefighters per apparatus that we staff.
So it does not state that you have to replace anyone who's out for any reason.
It does and it doesn't. So it doesn't identify 10. So it identifies how many apparatus. If the fire department chooses to staff an apparatus, for example, the engine at Monteluise, then it identifies the minimum assigned personnel to that as 3. And so that's where you get to the 10, because if we're staffing, it identifies 3 to an engine, 2 to a rescue, 2 to a truck. So if you identify that our model is going to consist of 2 engines, a rescue, and a truck, then we get to that 10 number. Because the contract identifies what the minimum is for each apparatus.
A rescue, a truck, and an engine.
And 2 engines.
So, 2 engines, okay, that's how you get to 10. All right, then in the contract, as we found out, is expiring this year. Will you attempt to keep the same contractual replacement language, or would you like it reduced, or what are you going to try to do in the upcoming contract?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to change that. It should stay just like it is.
Yeah. All right, well, that's, so we are at a new point where, in terms of the consideration of additional personnel, because unless you change your service model to be 11 per shift, we can look at this a little bit differently than we have in the past. So that's major there. All right, and now the other. Do you want?
No, you're fine. You're fine. Actually, this is one of the best recaps I've ever heard you come up with. You actually.
Well, it clarifies a whole bunch of
I know.
confusion that we've had here for so many years.
I actually feel you did a great job in recapping what the chief presented,
Yeah.
and I was.
Now, I could pause here if anyone else would like to talk about this contractual replacement issue at this time.
Actually, just a minor thing, Mike, because again, I think I have some different numbers than maybe everyone else, Paul, so.
Yep.
Because this document I have, and by the way, I didn't get part of the package, and maybe that's my
Okay.
issue. Shows the personnel line going up 5%, it's about 170,000, and it showed the contractual replacement going up 15,000. But you're saying the real numbers are the verbiage, which shows a 240 increase and maybe a 360 decrease. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so remember that the full-time line in this next year is gonna pay for 6 months for the prior fiscal year's calendar year hire. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because-
Right.
Okay, so you've got essentially one whole salary in there.
Right.
And then the balance of that should be the hiring of 2 personnel mid-fiscal year again this year.
But I don't think that's what I got.
Okay.
Right.
Because that can't be I just think that whatever this document is, doesn't have that information.
Well, wait, the question first is, what is the contractual increase in full-time employment, in, budget to budget?
That's on page 42.
That's on what?
Page 42?
Page 42.
The employment table?
Yeah.
Again,
It is, what
It
percent?
goes from
What
31 to
percent?
33 is proposed.
What percent?
we're moving a little off. I think some of the numbers haven't been completed.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
do
Yeah.
not believe the added people are in our line item, other than in your presentation portion and your verbiage. the
Right.
Write-up. It's not reflected in the solid book we got, the 119 book.
Correct. I don't prepare the full-time personnel line.
It's not in the 119 book, just his write-up.
Well, the change,
of course
but
it is.
the
It's on page
change
42.
in contractual replacement is in here. That's reflective of the additional 2
That is, but
person.
added to 2
So-
people. The
so
2
it's-
additional people are not in there.
And it should,
Okay, well, I'm saying if you're gonna change one line, you gotta change the other line.
they should both be
This.
changed.
And we'll,
Yeah,
item
we'll make
3
sure.
days And we'll get it corrected.
yeah.
So I would focus on his presentation, not on your budget book right now.
Well, that was sort of my question, really.
I would
That's-
focus on his presentation.
Okay.
I think that is what we, and then we can correlate the information, but you need to listen to his presentation. Now, as I said, you did a really
Yes.
nice
But
recap of what he
yes.
said.
Before I move on, would anyone else like to speak about this subject?
Tim, did you have something, or you want to?
No, I just want to get that, I
Okay.
got it now.
I just wanted to clarify one point that Mr. Hallahan made about it's not necessarily 10 per shift, but as the chief stated, staffing of each piece of equipment. And that particular staffing requirement changed when you opened up the Montauk's Firehouse as a hybrid house.
Correct.
Because it used to be the case that we had more firefighters required to staff a given engine. But then when you shifted to having 2 engines, one from headquarters and one from the Montauk's Firehouse, that number was reduced.
From 4 to
Is that
3.
correct? Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Michael, you had something else?
Yeah,
Just one other question here, Chief. You're listing the 10 personnel and what their assignment is like. With the rescue, you have 2 personnel, 1 engine. All of these 10 people do not travel to an incident at one?
It depends on the incident.
So there could be somebody still back at the house, the firehouse?
With an apparatus, yeah. So, for example, an accident on a highway, 2 of those apparatus you see listed there will respond. A house fire that comes in, all of them will respond, because, again, you need to get to that 16, 18 people on scene anyways, according to national standards. And so we mobilize them all. We hope they're not all needed, but we get them started that direction anyways. A single medical incident, a routine medical, only one of those apparatus will respond. So it just depends.
Okay, thanks.
And what's good about, and people may not realize how important the entire dispatch system change was. That entire dispatch system, allowing us to triage, has changed who he sends to a fire. So he may not send the rescue unit because it's something that just requires EMT service. Leave the rescue unit in the firehouse in case something more catastrophic, heart attack, what have you, comes in.
Yeah.
So it's affected his numbers a lot. It affected his usage of employees a lot. I actually, you know, everything's been moving in a positive direction, I think, these last several years.
Yeah, that's good to know.
And adding these 2 employees, once we really crunch through the numbers a little bit more, might be a valid approach. We always thought, your gut instinct is it has to be. But, you know, with everything else,
Yep. Yeah, and I'll work with the finance office on calculating that full-time line. We had a brief meeting this week, but with obviously what's going on right now, some of those things may have gotten mixed up a little bit, so we'll work at it.
Well, for years, the OT line was always off.
It has.
Out of sight.
Yeah, so again, I mean, and that was prior administrations, that was never a focus, that line. It wasn't. So, for example, when I got hired, there was 28 positions, firefighter positions. We staffed it with 27. There was always an overtime for one person. We just, as a town, for years and years and years, we didn't hire that person. So the overtime line was never a concern in prior years. It's a concern now, and for obvious reasons. And so the way that we can address it is to overstaff the shifts so that we have the ability to run down.
But Chief, it's really important that we distinguish between overtime and contractual.
You're correct.
replacement,
Yeah,
right?
we call it,
So
I was saying overtime,
we
but you said
split that out in
overtime.
2018-19, just for the reason that Jim pointed out, that overtime was completely out of control because it wasn't split. And now we are splitting it, and we have for the past several years since 2018-19, and it's a very, very important distinction.
It is.
Would you like to describe the distinction between overtime and contractual replacement?
If you'd like me to, I can,
Please,
yeah, sure.
if you would.
Yep, so overtime is discretionary. Overtime is a discretionary line for the administration of the department to use to call back personnel, to staff for weather incidents, for that type of thing. And so that's why that line, it's in the 60s, 68, 69, whatever it is right now. It's not very high. But that's the line that we calculate about how much we think that we're going to need to call back support for staff. And of course, that can change. Whereas the contractual replacement staffing line is solely for anytime staff is out from work for a shift for any number of reasons, that is, the replacement for that comes out of that line.
Right. And that, the overtime, as you say, is discretionary. It can be zero in a given month. It can be as high as, $10,000 in a given month.
Sure.
And also, I just happened to notice in looking at it, and I shared this with the board, that in the last few years, the overtime line item has actually been under budget, right?
Yeah, we don't, it does, I mean, I'd always want to see it funded at that so that we never get in a position where, I'm looking at, if we get, we haven't had a lot of snow, but if we start getting hit with blizzard after blizzard and I've got to start calling staff in because I know the travel time for volunteers to get to the station is gonna be too much or impossible, then I'll need to start calling in more career staff to make sure that we have enough to respond to incidents. And so there may be years that we're gonna push or in some cases exceed that number. But I think it's a fair number to keep where it is now.
Yeah, the last year, I think it was underspent by about 26%. So, but if anybody else has questions, I have quite a few, but Diane,
Michael, you good?
anyone else?
I'm ready to hit the next topic.
All right,
Sure,
then before
please
you do
do.
the next topic, Jim, Diane, do you have anything?
No, that might go with the next topic first.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, you may remember a couple years ago when Chairman Monaco and I helped to put together a study to review the efficient allocation of resources by the fire department. And it was incredibly enlightening and educating to him and I and to our group here. We always believed that it made incredible financial sense to delegate a significant or a portion of the medical calls to an outside vendor only to reduce duplication of response and to relieve the stress and strain on the fire department so they could concentrate on other calls and duties. And it seems like this is finally happening. So, I want to thank you very much for moving in that direction, because of the recommendations we made with regard to dispatch and the added resources there. Now that the in-house triage ability allows the discretionary allocation of calls in different levels of service for different types of calls. And it's my belief, it's my understanding that response time has been greatly improved. Is that correct?
For a variety of reasons, but that's one of the reasons, yes.
Yeah. So, I know that with our former vendor, AMR, they were not reliable, they were not quick, they were taking vehicles sometimes from out of town.
I don't know if I would categorize it like that, but.
No, okay, all right. Well, there were questions about their level of service. But it's nice to know that with Nelson, you've been quite satisfied with their performance. So that's all I had to say on dispatch, is that the work we put in to improve dispatch is paying off for the citizens of our town.
I totally agree. I think it's one of the major changes that impacted.
It's a huge change. I'll never forget when we were having those meetings and kind of describing to both of you how the origination of a 911 call and how that plays itself all the way out, and all the things that one or two people had to do in that dispatch center to accommodate that one call. And it was enlightening, I think, and it was awareness to see just how busy it can get, how fast over there, and they were limited in what they could provide because of the number of calls that were coming in.
Anyone else like to
Anything
speak
else
about
for the
this
chief?
subject?
Nancy, you said you had something else?
Oh, yeah, I actually have quite a few questions. So I'd just like to go back a little bit to the beginning of the chief's presentation, that at least with respect to contractual replacements, that in 2020 and 2021, contractual replacements costs were, the actual costs were $1,167,218, right? And if you remove from that what Mr. Frieda claimed was the cost associated, the contributions from COVID, which he claimed was $157,000, this line item still cracked $1 million, right, in that year. So, and that was a 42% increase from 2019-20 to 2020-21. So, and you're still requesting for the next fiscal year, still $1 million, right, for contractual replacement staffing. So let me just make a point first, and then I'll ask you a question. So the phase-in, Jim, to your point earlier, of the 8 additional firefighters. Years ago you had asked for 16, and the then Board of Finance said no. So then there was this proposal to add 2 incrementally, starting with Mr. Frieda adding 2 mid-fiscal year, and then we added 2 per year for the next 3 years. So the phase-in of these 8 additional firefighters was completed in the current 2021-22 fiscal year budget. So the taxpayers are paying for the 10 men per shift for 4 shifts. But as the chief pointed out, from an operational standpoint, the plan has not been realized. So I'm hoping Mr. Hallahan is hearing this. We do not currently have 10 men per shift on all 4 shifts. We added firefighters 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. They're in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but last I checked, firefighters 5 and 6 of the 8 to be hired were in the fire academy, and firefighters 7 and 8 of the 8 still hadn't been hired. So is that the case?
So to use your words, 5 and 6 were hired. They've completed the academy. That
Good.
3rd shift is functional now at Mount Luis. So you have 3 of 4 shifts.
3 of the 4. Great.
With that, and then 7 and 8. I've only just been able to hire 7 and 8 for the last 15 days. So no, I haven't been able to hire them yet.
Oh, I thought I saw the
It was-
ad for that.
Yeah, you did.
Way back when.
But it's still a higher mid-fiscal year.
Right, but you've been able to advertise it and interview people for quite some time. And so they will not be in the February academy. That's my
Our hope is they're going to be in the February academy. Yeah, there's a number. So to It's not as easy to find firefighters as it once was.
No, I believe you.
At all. So
I'm
we're-
just trying to gauge where we are.
Yeah, so the intent is to hire these individuals and have them in a February fire academy and to go live with the 4th shift, May or June of this year, upon completion of the academy.
So sometime this month, you're gonna hire someone, or hire 2 people,
Mm-hmm.
and the hope, even though there's a wait list for the fire academy.
There's not any longer.
Oh, there's not? Oh, okay, I thought there was a
Yep.
long wait list.
Every department has struggled so much to find staff that there's no longer a wait list. I encourage you to talk around to your other towns, and they're all doing the same thing we're doing. They're paying an immense amount of overtime because they can't hire staff right now.
It's amazing.
It's incredible right now. There
Right,
is just
no,
not
I'm
enough.
just trying to gauge where we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
because the taxpayers are paying for, 10 firefighters per shift, but we're not there
They've-
yet, so.
But you're not paying for it because the money's still in the line. It's budgeted for, but it's
It's
not.
budgeted for, and we're collecting taxes, so the taxpayers are paying for it.
Okay,
Right.
but
Not-
it's,
Not really.
it's,
What do you mean, no?
Well, if it's budgeted, it's just a line item. We don't spend the money until the cash goes out the door. So.
We're collecting the taxes based upon a mill rate, based upon the budget that we've set, correct?
We got a $111 million budget where the line items go up and down every day for different reasons, Nancy. So you're not wrong. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we taxed at a certain number, okay? but
Absolutely,
you
based
can't-
upon the budget that we set, right.
We could go through every line in this budget and say that this one's up and this one's down. That's just what happens in reality day to day, right? It's not that we're overtaxing the residents because we
No.
didn't hire these 2 individuals yet, right? He's
Well,
working
what
on
you're
it,
saying
and
is,
he may get 'em
we
in.
could hold back on that budget line till the
Right.
last day of the budget and then spend it.
Right.
I mean, so we're gonna carry that money throughout the whole year. We've taxed against it and people have paid their taxes for it and the line item shows it. But if we don't spend it till, we could hold off on spending that money till the very last day of the budget year and then you could say that it actually, the dues were paid for that money. But
Right, but-
until that time, I mean.
But if we haven't hired the people, then we won't spend that money.
Exactly.
I understand, but we'll still collect that money from the taxpayers, that's my point. So the only reason I'm spelling all of this out is just to say that from an operational standpoint, we have not fully realized the entire consequences of 4 shifts of 10 firefighters. We have not. We have not seen what that looks like in terms of either functionally, and we're hoping that it will be optimal, but more importantly for this board, we have not been able to see what that will look like from a cost standpoint. We are currently, only very recently, looking at 3 shifts with 10 per shift. And we probably won't see more than a month or 2 of 4 shifts if everything goes as exactly planned. So I guess my point is, from the standpoint of just being fiscally prudent, wouldn't it make sense to have an entire year as a baseline for comparison, where we have 4 shifts of 10 men per shift operating, rather than muddying the waters and let's throw in half year 2 extra guys on only 2 shifts? Then you don't know the contributions of the original plan, which is, as Mr. Hallahan said, the gold standard. The gold standard, as it was presented to us, was 10 men per shift. I think that we should actually see what that looks like for an entire year, and then you can consider a model that is fully loaded. And by fully loaded, I mean the cost of hiring 2 people, which the rule of thumb is you double their salary.
Nancy, first of all, I totally disagree with that. I mean, the whole idea of budgeting is you do project what those numbers are. You don't wait till you have history on it before you move forward on
This
something.
is a
But again,
substantial
let's go one
change.
step further. This is a workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're gathering information from the chief as to what he is requesting, what the administration is requesting.
Right.
We can ask some questions related to that. When it-
So what are you saying? You're saying you don't want to hire 2 firefighters until the beginning of the fiscal year? Is that what you're saying? Because you're saying you want to see the whole year of the model.
I don't think that we should hire 2 people to bring it up to 11 for only 2 shifts, because then what do you compare apples to apples?
But you could say that for anybody's budget. I mean, really, you could say for anybody's budget, you could hire.
In this particular case, we're talking about 4 shifts,
We're-
right? So
We're
we
going
need to
off
be-
track.
yeah.
We're going off track.
No, this is entirely
No.
on track. Entirely.
This is a workshop
I
to
understand.
gain his information.
Right.
Ask him questions that you are unclear of or you don't understand, which is fine.
Right.
But you're already starting to draw conclusions.
No. I'm just trying to.
You just said I would
spell out-
not hire the people because it
Well, she
doesn't
asked
make
me,
sense.
she asked me what I would do.
You even said that
So
before
I
that.
answered her question.
You even said that before
I
that.
think the point is the board can debate amongst themselves.
I understand, but I
Yes,
want the
but it's
board to
not with the
understand
workshop.
that we are not done with the 8-man phase-in. We're not.
I think
I don't
every
dispute
board
that.
member knows what's going on
Right.
with the fire department, with how many people they have working and where they're working.
We've done the same thing for 3 budgets in a row.
Yeah.
We've added staff mid-year.
Mid-year.
I understand what you're saying, Nancy. I guess that would be easiest on the board to make that kind of comparison, but that, by the way, couldn't be done for really 2 years, right? Because you'd have to get through this fiscal year, because we're adding the 2 added staff, then get through all of next year, right? Because then you get your full,
Yes.
right? And then we
Agreed.
wouldn't be talking about it really for. till
Because
the
it
following
wouldn't
year.
even be a small fraction of this year that we would have one. We would have all 4 shifts with 10 men per shift, right? So yes, I am suggesting don't hire
Thank
2,
you.
so that you have a full year. Goodbye, Mr. Nussbaum. So my questions for the chief, again, just in terms of
Yeah, ask him what questions you have.
in terms of having all of the facts in front of us, is you presented the fire statistics, and again, the reason I know them in advance was because they were in the Citizen, which was very convenient, and they also highlighted specifically the 4,896, and they presented it as companies responded to that number of calls. So since we don't do budgeting for 5 years, but rather 1 year at a time, what was the call volume change from last year?
I don't have that, I can find it. It wasn't that much. It's pretty much what it was the year before, up by a little bit. But again, what I draw your attention to is in this last calendar year, we had that entire year of data for Nelson Ambulance, in which we were sending just an ambulance to calls. And so I reported every month at the commission meetings that the ambulance company is responding to anywhere from 80 to 100 calls without the fire department. There's a period of time prior to the dispatch, again, because 2 different initiatives here. One's the ambulance, this other one we refer to now is the dispatch, with the dispatch operations now allowing us to triage calls. We're estimating that about 40 to 50 calls per month were reduced in the fire department for EMS calls.
Yep.
So the concerning part with the total number of calls last year is that even with that reduction of 40 to 50 calls per month in the EMS calls, we still provided more calls for service than we've ever done before.
Right. So let me help you out then, because I did actually go back to your presentation last year, and
Yep.
actually the change is about 21 calls.
Okay.
So last year, and so that represents basically, in my mind, flat demand. And you pointed out, and as the article pointed out, that there were 480 EMS calls that were, you did not have to respond to, again, because of the triage, as well as another 100 rescue water pump outs. And again, that's a reduction in demand on the fire department, correct? And so my question is, the 480 EMS calls, so is that included in the 4896 figure?
It is not.
It is not.
I did 40 times 12.
Okay, so if no, then how do you accurately record the percent of EMS calls? Do you not include the EMS calls that are made,
They're
that
two
are
different
responded
numbers.
to by Nelson?
Yeah, so the CAD system keeps track. There's a for every 911 call, there's a general, what they call CFS number, call for service number, that's assigned to every single call, doesn't matter what it's for. If the police department goes, they're assigned a number. If the ambulance company goes, they're assigned a number. If the fire department goes, we're all unique numbers, all tied to that one big CFS number. But if the ambulance company responds and the fire department doesn't have to respond, it doesn't count for a call for us. So that 4896 does not include any incidents in which the ambulance only responded to.
And so again, in terms of not just assessing demand on the fire department, but an overall sense for the percentage of calls that are EMS, that number that you presented, the 56%, that's a little on the low side, right?
No, it's
Because
not. No.
there are many more EMS calls that Nelson responds to, but there's still
But he's
calls
not
within
presenting what
our
Nelson
community.
responds to, he's just presenting what they respond to.
It's only-
We're not working on Nelson's budget, we're working on the fire department's budget.
I understand. So the 480, are those calls that are
Those are- that's
entirely
a-
handled by Nelson?
It's a projection on my part, like I've been providing because I'll never know what that exact number was, because we weren't keeping track of it prior. Our dispatch never kept track of that number prior. AMR never provided us with that number prior. So it's a huge unknown. We'll never be able to know what it is. But I can tell you that just looking at the amount of calls that the ambulance company responds to alone, how I can see where they go and how many calls they respond to. I can see all of that. And then I can work math kind of backwards and say, okay, prior to the dispatch changes that we had, we'd respond to about half of those. It's a guess, but it's reflected even if it's a pretty accurate guess if you look at the fact that we're responding to 56% of our calls now are EMS. It used to be 72, 73, it would vary somewhere around there. So I'd say it's relatively accurate. But 480 is a projection on my part if you figure about 40 calls a month. And I presented that every month at the commission meetings.
So your PSAR does not give you the ability to determine number of calls responded to?
Yes, it does. It does. You know,
So
listen,
you're saying that you don't have that ability unless you
Before
back
we
it
didn't
up?
have the PSAR, he doesn't
Before.
know what
So now you
AMR
can?
was.
Okay, so that's my question. So in the last fiscal year, you couldn't,
Correct.
but now you can?
Because now
Okay.
we have the PSAR.
Okay. And again, in this newspaper article, it gives a breakdown of this 4,896 calls into all the different, coded amounts for, for building fires, vehicle fires, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you add up each one of those numbers, it doesn't add up to the total, and it's off by about 1,378. Is there some reason that there's a discrepancy there?
I haven't seen a newspaper article, so I'll have to look at
So,
it.
can you ask a specific question to his presentation?
Well, again, if
Outside article,
you
not outside
provided this
articles?
information to the town, I'm just trying to understand why there's a
I
discrepancy.
believe it was captured from a Facebook post, and so I'll have to look
I
and see
think I'm
that.
with Rich on this. I think we gotta stick with what the chief is presenting us.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the data as it's presented.
Then what's the question on the data he presented here to us that you have a question on or don't understand?
Okay. So the building maintenance repair that you presented, again, in your narrative, you referred to buildings being constructed 10 years ago, renovated 10 years ago. And as I understand it, of the 4 firehouses, that project for renovation was bonded in 2012, but headquarters and Monowese were rebuilt in 2014, and Ridge and Northeast were refurbished in 2016. And, I'm just looking at, and we see this every month, the difference in terms of the building maintenance and repairs, anywhere from, $13,000 to $65,000. So the question is, what exactly can we expect going forward now that we know that certain things have been taken care of? Are these all just sort of routine things, or are you anticipating, pretty substantial expenditures on each one of these houses?
Chief, 1 second. I mean, maybe you didn't follow what he was saying earlier. Northeast and Ridge Road both have existing older houses still connected to it. That's where sometimes the cost might be a little bit higher.
Right.
Monowese was basically completely redone, as
Was-
was Central Station.
Completely
But you have
rebuilt.
2 houses that were not completely redone. There was additions put onto them and a portion of them refurbished.
Well, I
shall
know
we
that
say.
Monowese had plans to do X.
Monowese is
and it was not
100%.
done.
Brand new.
And it
Monowese
was
is
done
brand
different.
new.
And then it was converted to being a hybrid house, but it really has only been a hybrid house for 2 years, right?
The hybrid house has nothing to do with anything. It was a completely new building.
Right, no, I understand. It was completely rebuilt, but the point was, it was rebuilt in 2014. So it's really not that old, and it was used as a volunteer firehouse until 2 years ago, correct?
Volunteer or not, it doesn't change the cost.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It doesn't change.
why would it change?
Somebody living there
Doesn't change. You're still keeping the heat on, you're still keeping the lights on, the lights on, powered and energized, you're still,
Okay.
everything's still operating. There's no change to a fire station because it's staffed or not staffed. The building line that I showed you and all those different items on there, those are ongoing needs and costs.
Okay. And I had the same question that Tim had, whether the technology request is for 10,000 or 20,000, so if you could clarify that. And I just had a question about the civil defense. So why separate that from the fire department budget? It has always been just a line item in the fire department budget, and then, again, depending on which packet you're looking at, it seems to be carved out, both your salary as well as this additional expenditure. And as you pointed out, it went from, 32 to your proposal of 52, but it had been 12,000 for many, many years.
You're right, and so when it was $12,000, our emergency operations center consisted of a closet right down the hall here, a 4x4 closet that we could not effectively manage incidents that were impacting the town. We've gone to a room now that's about this big, that we can assemble representatives from every department in town. Utility companies have phones and computer terminals and screens and so forth, and so operating that emergency operations center has allowed us to function that much better during disasters. So when your power goes on within 12 hours of the storm instead of 3 days of the storm like years prior, it's because of that emergency operations center. It's because there's a UI representative sitting from me to Missilianos away, and everything that comes in, I'm able to tell UI right then and there versus having to play phone tag and emails and everything else. It's incredibly more efficient to run emergencies that way. And so that's why that line's going up, and it's separated from the fire department. It actually, I learned, used to be separate from the fire department. I don't know why it was ever added to the fire department, but emergency management is a function of all departments in town.
So let me just jump in there. So
Please.
what you would see in what Paul's saying is you would see police, fire, myself, public works, public utility companies. So you separate the line item, not strictly a fire department expense. The resources that are allocated toward them stretch across all the other departments, with the exception of probably the library and Department of Recreation Services.
And just one more point regarding, again, the addition of the two personnel. As I mentioned, the rule of thumb for hiring in terms of budgeting is that it's basically 2 times the cost of their base salary. So if we assume $75,000 for a firefighter, that's $150 apiece. So we should assume that the cost is about $300,000.
I think that's an improper assumption. I think that dates
Seems
to,
high.
that dates to.
That's Ed's rule of thumb.
It's
No,
not.
it's not. No,
It's not.
And that may include pension. That's an old
Yeah,
number.
everything. It fully
But there's
loaded.
no pension
There's no pension
pension,
anymore.
the equipment, everything that they need.
You've got fire and police now working with no pension, 401k, which
Yeah.
is much more affordable
457.
to the town.
Yeah.
And you've got them working with insurance now that's an HSA plan. So your cost per employee has gone way down. It is not double.
So
Okay,
it's not-
well, I'm just saying that is the rule of thumb that I've always operated on, and I believe that Ed has said that more than a few times.
I don't
And
know
so
the
that-
number, Nancy, but I don't know. If you'd
But-
asked me 2 seconds ago before you said that, I would have said, I don't know, 150%. I mean, that's kind of a wild guess on my part. 2 seems high.
Again,
Yeah.
whether you use 1.5 or you use 2,
Right.
what you're really comparing is the fully loaded costs of hiring 2 firefighters versus the potential, as he's estimating, for saving $360,000 on contractual replacements.
Well, I think Paul said that he's going to do some math for us and provide
Yeah,
us. that information.
absolutely. I think the model has to be complete. It
Right.
can't just be 2 line items. It
Well,
has
let's
to be
get the
all.
model and we can analyze it and.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so let's be
Absolutely.
honest.
I'm just pointing out
I know.
that the trade-off is A for B, so we need to be abundantly clear about what we're talking about here.
Nancy, some of us been on the board a long time. We've had this conversation a million times. Million's too high, I know, it's exaggeration. Rich said the way I would have said it. Intuitively, it makes sense to me. We've argued about the math lots of times, okay? And you may be right, by the way. Maybe when we see Paul's math, we may all say, we don't agree with them. But let's give at least a chance to show us the math.
Absolutely.
And let's hear what people's perspectives are. Because I'm with you, I'd like to see the numbers. I'd like to see the numbers myself.
I love to see the entire model. That'd be great.
Do you have any other questions for the chief on his
That's it.
presentation?
Nope.
Anyone else have questions?
I have one. So since the model, we used that model for the past 2 years, how much of an impact has that made to the fire department and what you do? And the other comment about the incidents, like I remember that recent one where, wasn't it engine 9 that was on the scene of an incident recently and got, somebody get it?
Yes.
What, was that engine did it have to be taken out of service? Those are my 2 questions.
Sure. So, last year I showed a number of examples where I was able to show a direct impact to fire operations in terms of on-scene time, and I gave a number of examples where that engine being staffed made a direct impact on either that would normally be a call that there'd be no fire department unit available to send, or that would be a call where we wouldn't have enough firefighters present for a structure fire. And so I think one of the big things this board needs to keep in mind is your ability to staff has a direct correlation to injuries. If you're not putting enough firefighters on scene, then you're going to have more injuries. And so that's something that we incur a lot, our injuries to our firefighters. And so there's a direct cost for that. I didn't go down and pull up a lot of data for this because it hasn't changed a whole lot from last year. We're still running with 2 shifts. We had just started running with 2 shifts last year during a budget workshop. We were supposed to go live with the 3rd shift 6 months earlier than we did, and we had a couple of retirements happen, and I had one individual back out while they were in the academy and go to another town, and so we did not staff that 3rd shift early as I would have liked to. So I didn't really show a lot of data, but moving forward, it will be very easy to pull that data into these workshops, and I'll be able to, assuming that we get that technology line funded, I can use the same software because I can run reports now from years ago. If we have to change vendors, I'm not going to have access to those reports any longer. I'll be able to show you not only our on-scene time dropping in that area specifically, but the number of calls that we normally would have missed that we're now able to provide service to. To answer your other question regarding the apparatus, that is one of the biggest reasons why we send 2, sometimes 3 apparatus to the highway to serve as that blocking apparatus, so that you have apparatus positioned far enough back where they may not be far enough back to provide a whole lot of service to the accident. So again, think about all the stuff we have to carry now to the car that's off the embankment. If we're parked 1/8 of a mile, 1/4 mile back, we can't always bring that equipment to the scene. But we're positioning the apparatus in a way so that we're protecting the people that are working there, not only the firefighters, but the police officers, the EMS personnel, and so forth. That engine took a hit. That's the same engine that took a hit a couple of years ago. It's the same exact engine, and it was completely painted. I mean, it looks brand new, and it took a hit again. And I just received the quote. I don't think there's nothing wrong with me sharing this. It was $45,000 to repair it. Now, I don't know that we're going to be able to do that, in all honesty, and I don't mind sharing that to this board. The last time that this was hit, it was about $55,000, $60,000, I want to say, in repairs. And I had a conversation with the insurance company about, is it even worth repairing? Now, I wanted it repaired because that engine at the time, this is 3 years ago, we didn't have 2 engines on order. We still had a lot of the older engines, and that was one of my, I wouldn't say newer, but one of the newer engines that we had at the time that got hit. And the insurance company said, hey, we put a value of this, and I want to say it was like $150,000, $170,000, and I was asking them to pay $55,000 to repair it, and I had to argue with the insurance company to repair it. This time, I don't know what they're going to say. We haven't started having those conversations yet. I just received the quoting this past week. I'm expecting to have that conversation soon, and they may say they're going to total it.
But it's still in use.
It's still in use. You can't operate one of the doors very easily. And it's got an ongoing leak that's going to need to get taken care of. So we're adding right now fluid to keep it from failing. But we can't afford to lose it either.
No, I'm on that side of town. I see that engine all the time, and when my daughter got caught in that, she was texting me. I was like, oh my God, it's the fire. I went and looked.
We had so many accidents that morning. They were everywhere.
I know.
And we almost had staff get hit. I mean, we had staff it's on dash cam for one of the state police cars where the staff member had just walked away from that side of the apparatus 3 seconds earlier.
Oh, that was a week ago?
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Anything else for the chief?
3 minutes.
One observation. I find it very upsetting that you can't get hires. And we have 35 volunteers out of 105 available positions. And you also mentioned earlier today that you just got CO for the tower. Now, you think that's going to help getting us more volunteers?
It's going to help retain the ones that we have. It's going to help with the Explorer program. I'm putting a lot of faith in the Explorer program. You know, and we have to look at how we're going to invest in a volunteer. I think we have to shift away from expecting somebody to volunteer for 10, 15, 20 years. But if we can get 4 or 5 good years out of them, we'll take it. And so the Explorer program, I think, is a good model for that. And I'm a product of an Explorer program myself. I started at 16 years old. So it's going to help with things like that because it's going to completely revolutionize the way that we train and having those variety of floors and the different evolutions that we can do. I mean, it's incredible what's going to happen there. But I'm not going to fool this board. We're hurting for volunteers. And it's going to come to a point right now where it's going to impact us. I mean, every town around you has shut down a volunteer station. Every town around you.
That's amazing, because when I got out of the Navy many years ago, they had 500 volunteers, and there was a waiting list to become a fireman.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't pay your way in, and today it's completely opposite.
It's just not like that anywhere. And so I've had conversations with chief officers from other towns about this, and they'll say to me, geez, you know, how many do you have? And I'll say, I have 35. And they say, you have 35? If you have 35, you're doing something right, because I've got 4, or I've got 6. So we are, you know, we may not realize.
We are doing something right.
We are doing it right, yeah. So you're right. A training officer, having somebody there every week training with them and keeping them engaged is huge. Yep.
I've heard a lot of positive things about that.
100%.
I have 2 more quick questions. I noticed that the fire headquarters has 4 bays and that house, I think it's engines 1 and 3, the tower, and rescues 1 and 2, the gator rescue boat with a trailer. So have there been occasions in this last year in which you've had to use that backup engine?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
All the time.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, because I see that, and I was like, oh, there's 2 engines there. So
Yep,
I just
all the
wondered
time.
about that. And then, again, now that you have much better control over the statistics for the department and access to different things, is there any way to amend what you present each year to reflect the fiscal year rather than the calendar year?
Why would we want?
Because we're operating
Calendar
a
year.
budget on a fiscal year, not a
Yeah.
calendar year.
Oh, the stats themselves?
Everything that he presents, you know, he's presenting statistics on a calendar year and then
Gotcha.
proposals on a budgetary fiscal year. I'm just wondering if there's any way to, over time, marry it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how what you put in for a start and end date. It doesn't make a difference to me. It's just, it's fine. We do something similar for the CAF reports. I
Yeah.
think they have to come
Right.
I
out.
don't think
That's
it's,
what
yeah,
I
I don't
said.
think it's a big,
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank
you
you.
said you had something else, or you're good?
Really quick, I'm a little out of word. Back to the volunteers again here. You showed the numbers up there on the screen as to what our volunteers are presently. What have the changes been in the last year in
You
terms
asked
of
that
losses?
same question last year.
They haven't changed much. You've been about 30 or so the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's and that's what I'm
Okay.
saying. It's been, so going back way to
Okay.
fiscal year 18-19, there were 37 qualified.
Okay, yeah. Now,
Correct.
you set and enforce certain participation standards for volunteers.
We do.
Yeah. I think as a minimum requirement, you were asking them to respond to something like, was it 25% of all calls in their sector, in their region, or all calls for the entire town?
In their region, in their district.
In their district. Now, has that minimum requirement changed in the past year?
No.
It stays at, what is it? Is it 20?
25%. 25% of incidents, 50% of drills.
Okay.
Is that all calls or just all calls or calls you call out the volunteers?
Calls they call them
Calls
for.
specifically for that volunteer and the company they belong to.
Right, so it's not all calls.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I didn't know if you make certain, if that's flexible, if you make certain exceptions or understanding of the people who are the volunteers in terms of what their other commitments are.
Sure,
My question's about retention.
So I can tell you those numbers are reviewed every 6 months, typically in July and January. I meet with the leadership of each company, a volunteer company, and we go through, monthly they're printing reports. This isn't a surprise to them. Monthly they have access to the same reports I have access to, where they're able to see kind of where they're at with numbers. But there is a high degree of discretion used. So if professionally you're seeking a paramedic license, an EMT license, or something like that, we waive everything. We want you to get your paramedic, we want you to get your EMT. Forget about the numbers while you're in class. Just concentrate on class. If you're going through the loss of a child or something like that, forget about the numbers for that 6 months. So there's a high degree of discretion.
Okay, thank you. A clarification question on the employment table on page 42 here. From year to year, and by the way, I believe that if this is the last year of the existing labor contract, there will not be an increase shown in the labor line due to contractual reasons in our book for the next fiscal year. Is that not correct?
I guess it depends on when's the contract. When does the contract expire?
June 30th, and so any anticipated raise would typically go into elsewhere in the town budget.
Yep.
So the new hires may be in that.
Yeah, maybe,
that
that's why it's not
okay,
there.
so we needed that
Good
clarified.
catch.
Yeah. Now, my question on page 42 is, you've got the captains pretty much the same, 364 year to year. The lieutenants, though, are going from 339,000 to 424,000, up 80. Is that because you're shifting? I don't know. What is that? What's the reason for that difference?
Good question.
Sure. So one of the things that you'll see in that table of employment is the number of lieutenants is 5, not 4. We only had a need for 4. I'm going to ask you to just hear me out for a second as to why there's 5, and do your research before you maybe have a judgment on this.
Sure.
Is during the initial time that 4 individuals were offered the opportunity for promotion, or I should say during the initial test period for lieutenant, one of the individuals that tested for the position was deployed to the military. USERRA, which is a federal law that covers this, specifically says that we need to offer that individual the opportunity to test and interview if they so choose, even though they're deployed. So they can test or interview no matter where they are in the world, according to federal law. That individual, at no surprise, ranked in the top 4. We could not promote that individual. We had to promote that individual, whether they were deployed or not. And at the time, they were expected to be deployed for another year and a half, potentially longer, potentially not come back at all. We just didn't know. And so that individual was promoted. It didn't cost us anything because we weren't paying for the salary, but to save on the overtime for that next year and a half, we promoted another lieutenant, which is why it's 5. Well, lo and behold, that individual came back to work, proved us all wrong, and we're holding 5 lieutenants right now, and basically when a captain retires, that'll drop back down to 4.
Okay.
So it was an overtime savings for a year and a half.
Thank you for that clarification. Lastly, the library gave us a nice little item here. Does the fire department have anything on the way
I said
for
that
us?
when I walked in. I know you guys had props and gifts, and you learned what a hotspot was. I'll work on that for next time.
Because he needs a Chromebook.
I do actually have one question, that you raised a really important point,
Thank you, Mr.
which
Chairman.
is, since the CBA is up for renewal, and you're talking about swapping out time and a half for time, what is the feedback from the union regarding this particular proposal? Only because there's the possibility that individuals will see their annual salary go down.
The new generation of individuals that every employer is hiring right now does not want to work more than they have to. So where you and I grew up, we worked for the overtime. That's where we would make our money. That's where we would save for things. That's what we would do. The newer generation of people, the employees right now, don't want to work any overtime at all. They want to come in, they want to do their shift, they want to go home. They value time. They have a tremendous work-life balance, and the overtime is not important to them. So what does not reflected in your budget that you see every month in the contractual replacement staffing line is you don't know how much of that is elective. And I can tell you that there's less and less of it right now that's elective In other words, people who want to stay and work to maintain that 10, there's less and less elective than there has been in a long time because the newer employees that we're hiring don't want to work.
Right, but the vast majority of your employees are not new employees.
No, I understand that, but
So, and that their
There's
income
8 to
is
10 new
40 to
ones.
100% is the contractual
Yeah.
replacement staffing.
they're okay with it.
Okay? Remains to be seen. Thank you.
Everyone's good? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Very nice.
You know, Paul, I heard that from a woman I know was a nurse, she runs an emergency room.
Yeah.
She said exactly what you just said. She said she can't get people to stay late, they won't work on weekends. She was telling me how many, they were down like.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.